My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice cold. I'm only here to even a score. Whoa. My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice cold. I'm down right now, but did it before. Whoa. See from here we gon' up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up. See from here we gon' up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first live. Yes, that is our first live for the Knighted Ones podcast. So it's a little bit different than usual. Our producer, Nobra, can't fix my mistakes, but welcome to the Knighted Ones podcast, episode number 67. As a reminder, we're the only podcast that features a former UCF national champion, a former UCF radio host, an ESPN analyst and hoops player, an infamous rapper, our resident influencer and IG star, shooting the breeze, talking UCF sports. As you can see, it's just me for now, but I'll be bringing the team on. Remember to like and follow us on YouTube, IG, X, and all of the things, and to check out the 70-plus teams and conferences on the College Huddle. So without further ado, we're going to be talking a little bit about Scott Frost, actually a lot of it about Scott Frost, a little bit about Tre Mahajer, and a little bit about hoops, and most of it will be about Scott Frost and welcoming him back to UCF. We've got obviously some former cast members on this, former team members that are on this cast, and we'll be talking a little bit about what their history was like with Scott Frost and what they think about what's to come. So without further ado, let me bring in our resident producer, Nobra, to the stage. Nobra.
Hey now.
Hey now. Welcome to the stage. Thank you for doing this. Again, this is our first time doing a live, so please bear with us. Next to the stage is the tallest man in all of podcasting, Ben Stout. Welcome to the stage, Ben Stout.
What's up? What's up? I got my UCF like a long sleeve little hoodie thing. You know, I'm feeling the cold front. Scott Frost is back, baby. Let's go.
Right. Frost warning. Next to the stage, our IG aficionado, Alan. Welcome back.
Hey, what's going on?
Glad to have you back, dude. Are you excited?
I'm very excited.
All right, let's dig into it. A very special guest who is part of our history and someone who joins us occasionally when he can. Andrew Fagley, welcome back to the stage.
Hey, how you guys doing? Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Last but not least, and always last, Josh Lazar.
Throw last year into an open fire.
Oh my goodness.
Scott Frost's here to fix it so.
Oh my God.
Knights rejoice and sing like a choir. And Roger, let's get on with the show.
Thank you. I appreciate that permission.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Tre Neal will be joining us here shortly as well. He just checked in. He is coming to us live from Spain. He's so excited about talking about Scott Frost. And unfortunately, their Wi-Fi is slower than it is here in the United States. So he will be here shortly. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. This, like I said, this is new for us. You can comment. Nobra, our producer, will be monitoring the live stream. So any comments, questions, concerns, thoughts, anything like that, Nobra will be fielding those questions. And he'll also be posting them live on the show, so you can interact with us while we're talking about the big news. So, if you guys watched the show, you know that I wasn't that excited about the possibility of bringing Scott Frost on, right? However, we did bring Frost back for part 2, and I am excited. One of the things I did say was I was going to be excited about what it does for the fan base, and I think by and large, and there he is.
There he is.
Dude, you missed your opportunity to do the intro. I was totally unprepared. These poor viewers are watching us. But Tre Neal, former UCF player in that 2017 team, someone who has been with UCF, a Scott Frost-led UCF, and a Scott Frost-led Nebraska team. So we're going to be leaning on him to talk about what it really was like. Scott Frost, in his interview yesterday when he was answering the Q&A, talked about what it was really like for the guys to build the culture. So I'd love for you to talk about that, how you experienced him as a coach, what you see for the future, and how excited you are about bringing Scott Frost back. So Trey, why don't we start there and start with you? What does this feel like bringing Scott Frost back to UCF, other than the fact that you want sideline passes?
Mike's
Oh,
Yeah.
Come on.
and his mic's not working.
Come on.
Come
They don't
on,
have
Trey.
working mics in Spain.
Oh,
you.
Look at it. Boo.
Yeah,
Ultras-
That's because you
Oh,
work
okay,
for
I'm
LA
good.
There you go. You gotta get yourself off mute.
Act
buddy.
like a professional, Trey.
this is awesome.
Man,
We're going live, baby.
I'm
That's
just
right.
excited. But no, it was outside of the sideline passes, obviously. I'm just excited just because I know what it can be. Will it happen? I don't know. You know, it's a whole different ball game he's going into than the first time. But I'm just excited because one, that's my guy. I mean, that's a lot, as you saw by the outpour, that's a lot of like what he did for us is bigger than the wins and losses. Like he made us enjoy playing football again. He made us enjoy just being around the facilities all the time. You know, like that's something that, especially I'm sure nowadays, is such business oriented. We're in such rigorous schedules. Just being able to go to your coach and have fun. I mean, like you said, the guy used to go after practice and go play pickup basketball. And those guys would talk about, you know, like they would be happy playing pickup basketball. He'd go play practice with us. You know, the things like that is just stuff you don't see. Like you said, he's a little bit longer in the tooth, but just that excitement, that's what I'm most excited for. And I want those guys to be able to experience that.
So Trey, we've had our own reactions like within our own text talk thread, and you know, you posted in our thread today an image of someone that you were talking to, Mr. Griffin by the last name. But you guys keep up that text thread that you had from all the former football players that were part of that 2017 team. Can you talk a little bit about what the reaction is within that text thread to the news of Scott Frost coming back to UCF and what they think it will mean for UCF?
Yeah, I mean, the guys they're ecstatic. I mean, we've been talking about it jokingly, like, let's get Frost back. They've been saying that for forever. Not really as a insult to Gus or anything, because to be honest, looking back, even though it didn't go the way we wanted, he still did a good job. You know, overall, just in the transition, he handled it well. He recruited well. The on-field didn't happen, but for a lot of reasons, that doesn't happen. But the guys are excited, man. I FaceTimed Shaquem earlier, just to, you know, I check in to see how some of those guys are doing, but just because I know he kind of was one of the forefront guys on social media with the, you know, the posting, bringing Frost back. Just like, you know, what's he feel like? And he's like, he's excited. I mean, he was always excited. He's one of the biggest UCF ambassadors. But again, it's different having your guy, and it's different having the guy that you saw change and that had that effect on you come back. And like Frost said, he wasn't leaving. I mean, I kept saying I doubt he really would want to come back from the NFL at, you know, not having to recruit and just coach football, come back. But he said this was one of the jobs, probably the only job he was going to do that for. But yeah, the guys are freaking excited. I talked to Shaquem. I've talked to, you know, Kyle Gibson. I've talked to really a lot of the guys that aren't in the NFL. They're all kind of busy doing their own thing. But they're just excited. And of course, we're all like, you got to get sideline passes, come out there and show them all that stuff. You know, a lot of nostalgia moments, but ultimately we just want what's best for the program. Like, we want those guys to experience what we got to experience. It's not about us anymore, but we know how fun it can be to play on a really good UCF team that's exciting, has the whole fan base behind them, that's willing to, you know, get on Twitter and talk trash to every fan base in the country. Like, it's fun when you have that backing and guys that support you, you know, even if you're playing well or not, individually, because I had plenty of people slandering me, and I know other guys that got slandered, but just as a team, yeah, I mean, just as it's just fun to be around. And that's what a lot of the guys are excited about, just that they get to watch them experience that, you know, watch these guys that, you know, have struggled and coming off of a season with a lot of expectations and severely underperformed for whatever reason. But now they get to, have Coach Frost, and it's going to be different. But ultimately, they are super excited. Super excited.
Awesome. Yeah. And, one of shout out real quick to Night Sweat Roundabout. He's checking in for us on YouTube. And again, just a reminder, you guys are more than welcome to ask any questions that you may have of Tre about his time, under the previous time when he was with Scott Frost, or what he thinks about the future and what it's really like to be a team member of a Scott Frost led team. We talked, you mentioned a lot of things about Scott Frost there, and I think most of us, it was awesome to be able to watch the press conference on ESPN Plus, which was a huge changing of the guard compared to where UCF is as a program. And then you talked about him playing basketball. He made a joke about not playing basketball. Scott Frost seemed very contrite to me. We're used to the swagger. We're used to, that in-your-face nature. I know there were many times in 2017 that I watched Scott Frost be pulled off the field yelling at refs. And I wanted that. I wanted that. I want that energy. That's infectious for the team. But he seemed like, he was asked about the UCF fast, the UCF fierce, modern interpretation of that. And I think he kind of walked that back. He walked expectations back a little bit, but he was very contrite. He was very, reserved with how he came out about what he was promising, what he had done, what you expected to see. What was your thought on that version of Scott Frost? And Andrew, I actually want to get some feedback from you on this too, because in our Nightline days, I didn't have a gray beard, but also you had a lot of interactions with Scott, and I'd like to see this version of Scott that we saw in the Q&A versus the Scott Frost we saw the last time around, and how you think that's going to translate.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Okay, so I didn't know who was going because you were talking to him and then talking to me. Anyway, so one of the biggest things to me is that Scott Frost has matured. Time has passed. He looks older. He acts older. He acts a little bit wiser. I think one of the big things with Scott Frost was the off the field stuff that happened more, and I think I said this in our chat. When you go through the things that he went through, alcohol, wife, all that kind of stuff, you mature, and it changes you. You're a different person after that. You look at life a little bit differently. He actually, the quote that he had, what was it, like, they forget to tell you on the way up to stop when you're happy.
Yeah.
That was the quote of the entire freaking thing for me, to be
1,000%.
honest with you, because I know that he was happy here. I know that he loved it here and didn't want to leave, but felt like he had to, because that's what they were doing. I know that that's true. I know that's true. And it didn't work out, and it was ugly and all that. And he actually gets the chance. He gets the do-over, He literally gets the do-over, and I think he realizes that. I hope he realizes that. He has to. But I'm horribly excited about it. I thought it was a joke. I was like, I was texting it like, yeah, for Scott Frost. I got into it on Twitter and all that. And I didn't think it was going to happen until it started happening. And then I was like, whoa, this is actually happening. It's super exciting though. I'm super excited. Just the energy already from that press conference to start it like that. It was done well. Terry was good. The whole thing is starting so great. And he, at least he said, the thing about we're not going to go undefeated next year, kind of tongue in cheek, but the UCF fans, and I'm hard on the UCF fans sometimes, but the UCF fans need to understand that. Like, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time, especially the way that college football is now with the NIL, the transfer portal, all that stuff. But he wants to build it old school. So that's exciting as well. He wants to try to go old school if he can and keep guys here, recruit guys that want to play here and not just for money.
So Trey, what was your, from your standpoint, the old Scott versus this version of Scott Frost that we saw? What does that feel like? How do you think that's going to translate with the team and the direction of what they're going to take? And we've actually got another comment from Dustingham Scorp that I will bring up here shortly as well. But I'd like to start there. What did you see from Scott Frost? You were with this guy day in and day out. He's the guy who was running the offense in practice at times. He always seemed so full of like confidence and brimming with that energy. What did you take out of the version of Scott Frost you saw? You lived and breathed with this guy during football season. So tell me what you saw out of Scott Frost at that presser.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like kind of like what Andrew said, just a guy who I think he understands that he's lucky to be able to come back to a place that he probably like. I said jokingly like go get Scott Frost, but that was like
you weren't joking. You were 100% on board.
Yeah, of course I was 100% on board. But like, I didn't think that was a realistic option. I didn't think just everything would align to where, like I said, I don't think Terry's going to do it because he doesn't want to come off as like just a guy copying Danny White. There's a lot of egos with just the business of football. I mean, it goes from just stubbornness to dying on terrible hit. Like, there's a lot of it. So I didn't think he was truthfully going to do it. So props to him for doing it. But Frost looks like a guy, like I said, who appreciates that he's getting a second shot at such a great university that he appreciates. I mean, you guys alluded to it. He didn't want to leave the first time. He felt, like Roundabout said, he felt compelled to go with the hometown feel. Like, that was the only place he was going to leave UCF for, was to go home with his dad, his parents, and just go back.
You were there during that time, Trey. Yeah. Did he share any of that with the team?
With the guys at Nebraska?
Well, with you guys when he was leaving. Like,
no, I mean, it's just he was professional about it. He didn't really say, like, I don't want to leave, but I have to leave. It was never like that direct, but you could tell because he didn't know how to tell us why. Now, the older guys knew why. The younger guys are like, well, if you don't want to leave, why are you leaving? Why are you leaving? We understood he's going back home. Like,
were you the only player that went with him?
It was me and Noah Vedral.
That's right.
He's
so this is something I wanted to ask you earlier. I just didn't want to interrupt, and I'm sorry to interrupt this time, but it fits exactly with what we're talking about, what you were just saying there. What changed with him when he got? Did something change with him when he got to Nebraska? Did it feel different with him? I mean, you knew him probably as a coach better than anybody did.
Yeah, I mean, when we, like I said, I think I've always said that, and he said it too. The AAC is different than, the Big Ten, and even now the Big 12. Like, it is a different level, a couple of levels higher than what you're dealing with, and not just the players. Because I always told people, player for player, UCF was probably more talented than Nebraska from top to bottom of the roster. But the coaching mismatch is the X factor, in my opinion. Now, there could be a lot of different. It's the coaching and the trenches. Like, that's truthfully
my definitely, because Big 12 guys are a lot bigger than.
Oh yeah, and Big 12 guys are bigger than the AAC, and Big 10 guys are 2 times bigger than the guys in the Big 12. So, like,
exactly,
so kind of navigating that jump, I think, is what the downfall, in my opinion, was. Now, I think also the player buy-in, like,
did he seem to show like stress though, like that it stressed him out, that it was like the spotlight was too big on him?
I don't think
I don't know if I think we've talked about this back in the day, but it's different.
I don't think the spotlight on Frost was ever too big. I think it's one of those things where, like, because the record in the one-score games was atrocious, whereas at UCF, I mean, we closed, it seemed like every one-score game, you know, like,
right, yeah.
I think it's one of those things where it compiled and it starts to compound, and it's just like I saw him in those games. It wasn't always his fault. It was our fault. Like, we didn't execute late, and we would make a mistake late. But, you know, with great responsibility comes the issues that come with it. You know, you get all the glory when you win, like he did, but you also get all the fault when you lose. So that's just what I think personally, and it just compounded. And then in this kind of thing, you never want to blame the kids. That's just how it is. It's not the pros. It's like these guys are kids.
It should be the coach's fault. I mean,
most of the time in college, it's the coach's fault. Truthfully, like I said, Coach Frost is, I mean, you know how much he means to me for that.
Yeah.
He opened the door to have the culture at UCF. I think it was the guys that embraced it, and we
was that same culture at Nebraska though, or not? Because it didn't seem like it.
To me, the guys didn't buy in, and that was even when I was there. It's like it's a struggle. It's Coach Frost is trying to help you, but like if you don't want to buy in, it's hard to make everybody buy in, and then guys are just starting to lone wolf. We kind of did that.
You gotta have players that are hungry for that culture. Like they're looking for it, and they're looking to carry through that culture. And I'm sure that you had dudes in 2016 and then carried it out throughout 2017 that just were able to like be that extension of the coach, right? And really bring that home. And you're right. If guys aren't responding to it early enough, like all of a sudden that what the coach is trying to say can become like a little bit of fall on deaf ears or become a brick wall because the players aren't stepping up to carry through that leadership.
Exactly. And it's one of those things where, like at Nebraska, and I love my time in Nebraska. It was freaking awesome. Like just experiencing that, and the fans, the people I met, everything, top-notch people, facility, all of that.
The winter, though, was it really worth it?
No, it was cold. That was one of the coldest I've ever been. But like, I tell people the difference because this is the question I always get. Like, what was different? And I'm just like, when we were at UCF, and I tell Roger this all the time, when we were 0-12, nobody was at our games. Like, it was the guys who either you have nothing to do and this just cheap tickets you can buy, you know, or you were, you know, or you all of them. Yeah, exactly. Well, you and Roger, like, y'all were like the true loyal fans. I talked to like this is how me and Roger really met and kind of hit it off was after those games. I talked to him like. He'd be like, you know, what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And we'd talk like X's and O's because really there was nobody there. And people, you know, after the games, everybody kind of huddles around the locker room. 2015, there was nobody except some significant other. My wife, some of those games she didn't even show up for. Like, I don't blame her.
I was there in a lot of those, though. I always stood over there.
Is there any truth that your wife was the girl that was dancing in the stand with the sign doing the jig? No,
that was her. Oh. She would be way too embarrassed to do that. Like I tell people that because when we were 0-6 in Nebraska, they were still selling out. And it's not the fans' fault. It's not Coach Frost's fault. It's not even the players' fault. But just the mentality of I can perform mediocre to bad and be rewarded with still selling out games, still having the pageantry of college football. Like it's beautiful when they have games. Like
that place is packed every game. I mean,
every game, win or loss. Like
no matter how bad they are, it's packed every game.
And I think that was to a detriment for the guys because it's like, what do you play for? Not just to obviously be good, but like you play for the fans. You play because we hated 0-12. We hated nobody being there, and if you came. People wearing bags on their head. Like, that's embarrassing. Like, that's not fun. We used to go to class. The professors would literally joke, how about the football team? Yeah, they're horrible, right? I remember we didn't wear football gear. We'd be like, yeah, the football team sucks. And we freaking play on the team. Like, you have to because, like, it's embarrassing.
You joined in on it.
That's funny. Like, it's embarrassing. But, like, at Nebraska, they adore you because you are a football player. Like there's nothing else to do. They adore you. So
Like you can't go out on the town there once they know who you are.
Yeah,
Like,
and we were losing, and people would come up, "Hey, you play blah blah. Can you sign this? Take a picture." Like it's a different level, and I think that kind of gets to the player's head as there's no punishment for losing. Like there's no negative to losing besides, okay, we lost, but everybody still loves us. They tell us good job all the time. No, that's not real life. Like at least to me, that's how I felt about it. Shoot, when we were horrible, those guys used to go on Twitter and say, "You guys suck," blah 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 blah. Like like that's the reality of playing college football. So that was the difference to me. And I think that's where it kind of with Frost, when the players don't buy in, you're leading a ship that is going to sink. Like because the coach can only do so much. He can put you in the best positions. He can do this, but if the guys don't buy in, if the guys are out there, lone wolfing it and doing whatever they want and costing the team, you're going to lose, and ultimately you're going to get fired. But so that's what I think the difference is to me from UCF.
Do you think that he can create that culture here? I mean, is that do you think that that's recreatable?
I don't think it's recreatable in the sense of.
Well, Trey, hold on before you answer that, because that's actually where I was going to go with that too. Because like the question I have is more part of Frost's allure was that we came from, and you were on that team too, the 0-15 team, like you were talking, or 0-12. Not 0-15.
Hey, don't add 3 more.
That was a long time ago. That was 0-17, Roger. Come on.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're not that old, but the O'Leary team that was, that lost every single game, and largely most of the players on that 2016 team, with the exception of like Mackenzie Milton, etc. A lot of the allure with Frost was he was able to take that 0-12 team and turn it around that quickly. The question is, obviously, we're not in as bad a situation as what we were then. Correct. Obviously, we have the advantages of power being in the power conference now. But what things do you think that he can pull that he did at that time that he can pull into turning this team and to your point about the culture and all of those things around to help this team grow and be successful more quickly?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I said, like, when Andrew asked, I don't think he can recreate it, because I think the guys are different. I attribute the culture to the guys. Roger, you always talk about it. George O'Leary, although it was hard and tough, he made us tough guys. We were physical football players mentally and physically. Like, there was not a lot of things that would fluster us in the sense of you could yell at us, scream at us, you could make us do a million, bench press squats, whatever. There was nothing harder than an O'Leary workout. We always said if we didn't make it to the NFL, we would be elite, military soldiers. Like, that's how hard he worked us out.
That's what I was going to say, like the military.
Like that's how hard he would work it out. So like when Coach Frost came and he tried to push our buttons, every aspect physically and mentally, that was never the issue. It was trying to get us all to unify and gel as one. Like, hey, you can't lone wolf or you're costing everybody. We have to work together as a team. That's what he fostered great. I think he can duplicate that. The culture part is just, I think it'll be different. Now, I think it can have great success, but the guys are different. There's not a Shaquem Griffin on this team. There's not Mackenzie Milton. This is a totally different guy. So to me, to expect that same culture, I don't think you can do it, because, and it's not like it's a bad thing either. Let me say that. Like, it's just going to be different. There's going to be new leaders. We've been talking about this for 3 years under Gus. Who's the leader of the team?
Yeah.
Does anybody, like right now, who would you guys say was the leader of this team this past year?
I can't name one, to be honest with you.
You can't. Now, Coach O'Leary led teams. We knew who our leaders were. Terrence Plummer, Clayton Gathers, Blake Bortles.
We knew who the leaders were too.
The fans did too, yeah.
And you know what I'm saying? Even with Coach Frost, those teams, it was Shaquem Griffin, Dimitri Brim, Jemias Pittman, Wyatt Miller, all those, Aaron Evans, like those guys, Traquan Aiken, like we knew the leaders on our team. I've asked Roger who is going to step up on this team and be a leader. I think RP tried, but outside of him, there's not that raw, that get after a guy. I think that's where it has to start.
I think the crazy thing is that people bought into JRP as a leader more so after he left than what he did while he was there.
Yeah. But and it's like that, like I think that's what Coach Frost helped foster coming in. And I think he can do that again. Now, once they become leaders, how they take it that's up to them. You know, Shaquem was amazing, and even guys before him like Dimitri Brim and Drico Johnson and some of the guys on offense, Shaquille, his brother, Keem's brother, they were really good at fostering that in. And then Shaquem takes the mantle, and obviously him being a superstar, helping out. And then we just bought in and did our jobs. I think it'll be interesting to see who becomes that person, because I haven't seen it in 3 years who that person's supposed to be. I don't know. And I think that's what's missing. I've said that from the beginning. That leadership is missing because it trickles down everywhere. When you have a guy with one hand playing harder than everybody on our team, working out harder than everybody on our team, running to the football like a maniac than everybody on our team, you feel crazy because he would be limited in every other sense of the word, but you couldn't tell. So he's playing at a disadvantage. Why can't you play with an advantage just as hard as him? It's hard to recreate that, and I don't want to have people have that expectation that he can get it back there, that culture, because that was a blip in the moment culture, because that carried even when Coach Frost left. They still won 12 games, into the next year. And then the next year, they started off with 4-0, 5. Like, that was a 3-year, 4-year kind of culture between those guys, and we haven't seen it since. So I don't want the expectation to think he's going to bring that culture back. No, it's going to be a different culture. It's going to be – I hope it's great, just as his guy. But we're in a different era of football. NIL affects all of this.
Yeah,
I think
much different.
Yeah, I think that, the big thing that you brought out there, and we talked about how different that was as far as the Q&A and how he purposefully went out of his way to say those things. I think that's a huge point. And part of that is who he's going to bring along for the ride. Now, you heard that clip that he had at the very beginning about Mackenzie Milton and the jersey and someone else who could use that number more than he could. So I think, that was his gentle way of saying, if I can get Mackenzie Milton over, I will. But let's talk a little bit more about the staff, right? So one of the most important things about the staff is who he's going to bring back, who he's not, who he's going to keep, etc. So this question actually came from one of our viewers, Distingham Scorp. I mentioned that. I got it right that time. Sorry, man. He says, Hope Frost does not bring many of the old staff, bring back many of the old staff. They did great here at UCF, but Coach Scott Frost needs a better staff this time around. And Scott actually mentioned this in his intro, where he talked about the fact that he was going to take his time in putting together a staff, right? Let's talk about that a little bit. What do you think? Is there anybody, Trey, from the old staff that you would bring back? And this goes to the rest of the panel too. Is there anybody that you from the old staff that you would bring back? And then also, who would you keep? I know we talked a little bit about that last week, but looking at it again through the lens of what we have, the salary pool that we're going to have for assistants, etc. What do you guys think? Who should we, if anybody, should we bring back, and who should we keep? And there are a couple of guys that were on that coaching staff that are still on the coaching staff. Wink, wink. A certain wide receiver coach that I'm going to personally say absolutely should stay. So, what do you guys think about that?
Y'all want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, to be honest, I haven't talked to anybody. I have no idea who he's going to keep. I mean, when I look back how we did it, is almost 10 years ago. He kept Coach Beck, obviously, and then Coach Fish from Coach O'Leary's staff. I remember he asked us as players, because he met with everybody. He said, do you like, your position coach right now? Now, I don't know what anybody else said. I'm just going to try to understand the situation. I think the guys loved Coach Beck, obviously, and I think we all loved Coach Fish, even though, those are the guys that stayed. So And I remember I spoke glowingly. I'm like, listen, everything went wrong, but Coach Fish was a guy from Monday through Friday. He was helping us work. He grinded out the tape, even when we were losing and guys were checking out. He never did. He felt like there was a job to finish. And he was a player's coach, you know, and I think those were the guys that Frost kept. So I think he's going to have those conversations with the players. You know, I think any smart coach would do that. You know, I think there's a vetting that they do that, you know, they have guys, obviously, that he has in mind, I'm sure. But he's going to meet with the coaches and he's going to meet with the guys because you want to know what kind of guys the players were dealing with and if there could be a diamond in the rough. So I don't want to personally say this person should come, this person should stay, because I don't know the image he's trying to shape it into. You know, he talked about, like you said, Roger, you know, he started off the UC Fast and the UC Fierce, but I don't think he kind of wants to go into that direction. At least that's how I took it, in that, like, he doesn't want to replicate that. He wants to make something different, organic. Now, with, you know, the 7 years, 8 years of experience since then, you learn a lot more about people just working with them a long time and what they're good at, what they, you know, everything's great when you're winning, as you see. But when you lose, you start to learn more about guys. You start to know, you know, how they feel and what they do in these moments. So I think he's going to put together a staff. I can't tell you exactly who's coming. I know guys I would love to see come back. But I don't know if he's going to bring everybody back. And I don't know if everybody that was here wants to come back either. You know, some of these guys are in good positions and doing great for themselves, you know. So I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. We'll find out shortly who he starts to bring in. I think Beck is, I don't want to say 100% lock, but like he's like a 99%.
He's 100% lock. Come on,
yeah.
I have a question. Yeah. Trey, do you think he's going to try to bring Travis Fisher back? He was with
he was with him everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Currently
I would hope so. I'm a big advocate for Coach Fish and what he can do. I mean, just
where's
even
he at right now?
I think he's at Syracuse, if I'm not mistaken.
Sorry.
Yeah. I'm not, like, for what he taught me just to watch football and understand it, like, I'm a guy who's big X's and O's, and he showed me how to watch football as what it is, as a NFL player. Like, this is what you look for. Like, yeah, the X's and O's tell you this, but when you're playing the game, this is what you need to look for. Like, and I feel like that's helped, you know, guys like Richie Grant. That's helped guys like Mike Hughes, Neville Clark. All those guys, when he gets their hands on them, molds them and shapes them to listen, they all are amazing players. So of course I'm an advocate for him because, you know, he taught me a lot of what I know about football and how to watch football now. But again, I truly have no idea, you know, who he's going to bring, but I would love for Coach Fish to be back.
So, and you guys have heard me say it on the group chat, or you see me say it on the group chat. Like, this is the part to me that is like I'm like most anticipating now that Scott Frost is official. It's just like, and it was from the moment that we knew it that this was official, like that he is coming back here to UCF, and the staff that he puts together, I think, is not only just an exciting thing for us to anticipate right now, but it's just as important as hiring the man himself. I mean, who's going to be around him? I do think, Beck. I mean, I think Sean Beckton is an absolute lock. He's going to be on this staff. And there's been, I mean, even Mark Daniels was saying on the radio, you know, the embrace that those two guys had, like, just so excited to like have him back home, and so. I anticipate him staying, but you know, as far as this current staff, what I liked hearing from Scott Frost last night is just using the word deliberate. Just you know, he really did seem like at the press conference that he was still in a state of just this whole thing is surreal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he just was still in a whirlwind, and I really appreciated that about the press conference more than anything else, is that, like, Scott Frost, and this maybe it's just still from the Gus effect of just the veteran coach speak that Gus would have, which he would say a lot of things without really telling us anything, and even Heupel was pretty good at that as well, but you almost forget, since it's been so long since 2017. You just saw it in the press conference last night that like Scott Frost is just a genuine dude, man. Like he just tells you like I mean, it's refreshing now that we've seen what the other side is like. And I think O'Leary was genuine too. He was just genuinely kind of a gruff, rough guy.
Yeah.
Just I went through there, right? But O'Leary didn't give you a whole lot of coach speak. But regardless, it's like it's been a little while since Scott has been here, and so you see that press conference last night, and you're like, and some people may say, oh man, he looks a little tired, or he looks a little like, weary or cautious. But I just think he was just showing us what he was going through in that moment. He's very, very genuine and almost like vulnerable to show us the way that, he was feeling in that moment. I mean, it's just completely surreal for all of us, but most of all to him and his family. And so, I like the answer to that question that I expected to be asked, and it was about, what kind of staff he plans on putting together here. And he was very honest and open. I thought that, he was going to take his time and he was going to make sure that he puts together the right guys. And I don't know if any of those or any of the current staff are some of those right guys outside of Sean Becton. But I don't think I would be too upset if some of our current staff stayed together, if he had those same conversations with the players that are going to be here and buy into the culture, that they want those guys around.
Yeah, I think the Kennys are a big one, especially from a recruiting perspective. Sure. I think recruiting is going to be a big piece of this, especially since he's starting from behind the 8 ball. It would make sense. T-Fish was great at recruiting as well. So pairing him up with the Kennys, I think would be a big win. It's going to be interesting to see what coaching staffs are available, because there isn't as much movement this go round as there was on the coaching carousel. Now, obviously, we still aren't through, the postseason for college football, but college football has gotten to the point now where the regular seasons are over for most teams. So there's going to be movement. There's going to be folks. Syracuse, you mentioned, our former head coach, Dino Babers, was demoted there from head coach. And, if he's there with that staff, I could see him being available to make the move, because he went there with Coach Babers to be there with him on the defense.
Babers got fired?
He got demoted to offensive coordinator at Syracuse.
And he was the head coach?
Yeah.
That's weird.
He took
I've never heard of that.
Job when he was in the running for UCF. He took the job
last time.
Yeah.
And he went to Syracuse. Yeah.
He got demoted and he didn't get fired. I've never seen that before.
I've never seen that happen either. That's what I'm saying.
That's weirder than Mike Gundy taking a massive pay cut to stay on as head coach. That's even stranger. But
I'm not the head coach anymore, but you can be the offensive coordinator.
That is super strange.
Thanks for that, Roger. That's I was waiting for someone to use the close your eyes and imagine line. So thanks, Nightswet.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if all the details, forgive me if they came out over the last few hours. I know it's a 5-year deal, but I'm not sure what the money is. But what I had heard is that, they took care of Scott Frost, obviously, with, they didn't just, hey, here's, you could take what you can get here. He's not the lowest. I doubt he's going to be the lowest paid, Big 12 coach by any means.
Ben, the contract's supposedly $4 million escalating to $5 million.
Okay, per year for 5 years.
Yeah, they basically gave him the same contract that Gus Malzahn did, and supposedly the buyout is I think it's 75% of the total contract.
Yeah.
Okay, and well, that's great. And but I believe what was more important, as far as what I'm hearing, obviously I'm not in the room or anything. I just got to pull from little things that I'm hearing, is what was really important to Scott Frost, which should be, is what we're talking about right now. What's my pool going to be for my assistant coaches, right? So I think he's, very much in accepting this job, very much intentional about, I have to make sure that I'm going to hire the right staff. And I think probably just as, if not more to him, important than the salary that he was going to be able to get to be head coach he was probably fighting for every dollar there for his assistant coach pool of money and the resources that we need in order to hire the right staff. And so while you could easily assume that was the case, hearing some of the things that I heard on the radio today and just in general, since we've made this official, kind of gives me even more excitement around who's going to be around Scott during this time. So that's great as well.
I can say, like, Coach Frost doesn't care about money. Obviously, he's not obviously going to coach for free. I mean, he's working 18, 20-hour days. He wants to be compensated.
He doesn't need the money.
Yeah, he does not need the money. He cares about his guys getting money and getting paid and taking care of them. That's a reason he went to Nebraska. I remember talking to him after he left. He was like, I'm doing this because these guys have earned it. And at the time, why would they were tripling, some of them quadrupling their salary. Like, that's life-changing money. You can't not almost do it. And you get to go home and they said you can bring your entire staff and everybody gets salary increase. That's what he worried about even the first time. It was never how much money can I make going to Nebraska or how much money can I make coming to UCF. I'm not counting the man's pockets, but Coach Frost is fine. He doesn't do this for money. If that was the case, he would have stayed in Oregon for the rest of his life. They were taking care of him there. But he cares about his guy. I mean, that's his whole thing. Is he care? I mean, just like as genuine as you say the press conference is, that's him. There's no fake with Coach Frost. When he left, he was crying. When he's upset, he's upset. He's going to tell you he's upset. When he's happy with you, he's going to give you the biggest hug and tell you how great you are. And he's going to go to bat for you. I think he's mature, like you said, Roger. Like, he's not that fireball that he used to be, but he still has it in him, especially when competition gets going. He does. But I think ultimately he cares about people, which I think that's what we love so much about him, was that he cared so much about us. And he cares about his guys. So I think that was important to him. How much money am I getting to pay for assistants? Because I want to be able to take care of my guys and get the best guys.
That's what gives me
more
confidence.
than he had the last time. So
that's what gives me confidence.
And he mentioned that the other night. He said something, it wasn't direct, but it was
exactly.
He mentioned it.
That part of it is what does give me confidence that he can recreate the magic here, and it's not going to be in the same way, of course, but. What I have confidence in, and we mentioned he's got to have the players that can carry through that culture. But what we're talking about right now, like everything about like him as a man, it just seems like he's going to be able to find those players, right? He's going to be able to find those people that can carry through that culture that he's trying to now recreate here at UCF. I just. The more I wrap my head around that he's back, because that's crazy to me. But it's just the more I think about it, the more it settles with me. It just gives me confidence that it's going to be different, and my expectations are not that it's going to be, as he said, we're not going undefeated next season by any means, or even the year after that. But by the same token, it just gives me.
I don't know about the year after that.
Yeah, maybe
that's about the right time.
I don't want to put my expectations there. I'm not putting that on you right now. But seriously, I just feel like I'm confident that he can learn, not only recreate what he in a different way what he had 7 years ago, but take what he's learned over the past 7 years and apply that to this new version of UCF with this new version of Scott Frost and see how this works and get players that will buy in, that are currently here and want to be, UCF Knights, and those that aren't here or just getting here that want to buy into all of that.
Yeah.
I have confidence that he can do it.
Yeah. I hope it's better, and I had a blast. I hope it's, we talk about the sequel, but I want it to be the 2.0 version. Like all these different iPhones and Apple
upgraded.
I want the upgrade. Yeah, I want an upgraded version from that. And that's high expectations, but I'm not even talking about the wins and losses. I'm just talking about the culture, the excitement. You can't tell me one game when Coach Frost was coaching that you weren't excited to go to the games. You weren't excited to see what we were going to do. I think that's a huge part of it. And I mean, we talk about the past few years, the fan engagement, the student engagement. When you're playing a boring brand of football, you're going to have people walking out. You're going to have people leaving. The only time I remember it, at least the 13-0 year, people were leaving is because we were beating teams so badly. They're like, all right, we can go watch the rest of this.
Ready to get to the bar.
Yeah, like let's go celebrate. Otherwise people stayed to watch all the time. So I think just that excitement is what you want to bring. Now, are there going to be rough patches? Of course. He even talked about it. It wasn't easy the first year. Shoot, it wasn't even easy the year we went undefeated. There was so much going on from January 1st of that year all the way till the Peach Bowl. I mean, even through it. And we've talked about it. Like, it's not we were just showing up to work and everybody was all happy. No, there were a lot of trials. There were a lot of issues we had to work out. But again, that culture that Coach Frost fostered, it helps in those rough moments. It helps, when you're at odds with your team and there's a situation you have to deal with. It helps that your coach has your back no matter what you do. And I think that's what, when we talk about culture, that's what we want Coach Frost to bring back. And like you said, ultimately it's going to be on the guys. If the guys don't buy in, it's not going to work. And that's where I give Gus grace. I think the guys checked out. Allen's talked about it a little bit. I know they won't. Nobody will ever say they will. But when when it's like you said, Ben, when it starts to fall on deaf ears, it's hard to bring it back.
It is.
It's hard to get those guys back in and have the want to. So I hope Coach Frost can bring that back. I hope there's guys on the team, that want to bring it back to that and make it better. They have so much better facilities. They have much more access.
Well,
they have more money. They're getting paid. Why not make it fun and enjoy it? So I hope that's what.
Well, I think beyond that too, though, Trey, to kind of not to belabor your point, but the guys that are here are the guys that stayed in spite of all that and having the ability to go to the portal, that had the ability to transfer schools without having to sit out a year, that had all of those things, and still before they knew who the coach was going to be officially, they stayed. So I think
we'll see who stays and who doesn't, right? But true. Especially I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt. That's how I talk. I'm sorry. I just have a thought, and if I don't get it out, so now I forgot it. But
I have a question.
No, we have to give it up. I wanted to say we have to give it up for those guys that signed their intent the other day, that signed on National Signing Day, not knowing who it was, just going basically on Terry Mahajer's word. It sounds like,
there's no way I'm just speaking bluntly. There's no way I would have signed to a school and not know who my head coach is.
No,
I don't care.
I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy,
Alabama,
but those guys,
Alabama, those guys, props to them, because
and those guys will be leaders from the start. I think.
Yeah,
I mean, they have the best chance, and then the guys that stay, so.
And those are also the guys, that I think, from a portal perspective, today was the day that everybody could go into the portal officially. So
how many of our guys went in?
Not all of them that said that we're going to. Nigel Kelly, for example, he was supposed to. Rumor is that he went ahead and signed, and it's been confirmed by Brandon that he went ahead and signed Brandon Hellwig, UCFsports.com. Let me give him a plug real quick. If you want to be plugged into
always
us what?
Always.
Always with Brandon. If he's the guy, he's the guy that always gets the first question at the press conference. And,
or should.
Although he didn't the other night.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. Jamie say he got the first. Yeah. But either way, you guys should go check him out and his website, UCFsports.com. We've all been Dungeon members for a long time. So shout out to those guys. Also, And when it comes to the portal, one of the things Scott Frost said that he was going to, you mentioned it earlier about the high school guys and getting those guys and making sure they're getting paid. It'll be really, really interesting to see what he drags in from the portal as he puts his staff together and how quickly he can do it, because he's got a very short period of time to do that as well. Something that Chris Singh actually brought up, which is kind of interesting. He says Keene, Castellanos, and McLean are all in the transfer portal. Any shot we continue getting the ban? No. Keene,
not any of them.
Yeah, Keene cannot run the football effectively. Not effectively. He could get out of spots when he needed to, but he wasn't as mobile a quarterback as you're going to need. Castellanos isn't consistent enough, I think, throwing the ball, so I don't think he's coming back. And McLean, unfortunately, he's on his third stop for a reason.
It'll be four.
Yeah, I think he's still running back out of the end zone.
Did he play anywhere?
No, he went to Arkansas State and he didn't play.
Well, he did.
Arkansas State, he didn't play?
Yeah, he played a few times, but he didn't.
It's hard to keep up with. This is one of the things. Like I always tell people, I don't like the NBA because I can't follow all the Kansas guys or whatever, because I'm a Kansas guy. Yeah. And it's hard with this transfer portal to except for a few people, to know where everybody went. It's like for me.
Especially when they're on there, they go to their second stop after UCF as well. So
right, yeah. And then you're like, I saw that that these guys are in the portal, and it's like, man, how many schools are you going to?
I mean, hold on. He went 14 for 21 for 163 yards. You're going to tell me he played? Come on.
Yes, he didn't play.
Thank you.
He didn't play.
He played a little bit.
As I said, he played in a few games, but he didn't play in the bowl game, right? So that tells you everything you need to know about McLean. So, Chris, to your point, I don't think any of those three. What's going to be more interesting, and it brings up another point, is where does this leave Risk? Risk did decide to stay. There was all of the noise that we've had around quarterbacks for the past few years with Gus Malzahn. Risk hits the field, shows some signs of life. And now he's in a situation where Gus Malzahn leaves, who, by all accounts, I don't think wanted him to be the guy because he's not the type of quarterback that he likes. And now he's falling into, the situation with Scott Frost. And I don't know, because we don't know from an offensive system perspective what tweaks he's going to make now that he's had that Nebraska. The other thing someone brought up is with Scott Frost coming from the NFL, and Sean McVay saying that he started sprinkling in some of his concepts into the Chargers offense this year, right? A Chargers team that has Rams, excuse me. I don't know why I said Chargers. The Rams offense
because of the Chiefs.
They're both in LA. It's understood.
Yeah, those guys over there. But Sean McVay started using some of his concepts, right? The way that they play offense is different than the style that we're used to at UCF football, right? So the question is going to be,
you're going to see some Sean McVay.
I
guarantee you're going to see some. But
from a quarterback perspective, though, does Risk fit into that mold, or do we? Does he go out and get someone? I have my own thoughts, but I want to hear yours.
He's going to go get somebody without question. He's going to get his guy. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to go get his guy. I don't think Risk is the type of guy that he's going to want. I just don't, unfortunately, because I like him. But,
yeah, I like him too. I think he's he's the kind of kid that wants to go out there and win. He's the kind of kid who puts in the hard work. So, he might be that backup guy for you, but it's going to be really interesting.
You never know.
I don't know. I think he's got potential to be his guy. I'm not. There's certainly no comparison to the main guy, obviously, that wore that number when he was here with Frost. I mean, no comparison there at all. I'm just saying that Risk he shows a little bit of that mentality and that swagger that seems like his game and his and just maybe his mental side, like, could respond well to a Scott Frost system. I mean, I have no doubt that he's going to eventually, like, Scott Frost is going to eventually find his quarterback. And I'm not saying that's going to be Dylan Risk, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's the main guy next year, and we might see some flashes of him having a lot of potential to run Scott Frost's offense. I mean, he seems to have some of the capability to, both mentally and physically.
I think that's the first thing you do, though. Like with most coaches, like that's one of their first, especially with Frost's offense. He's got to have somebody that can really, really like know the playbook and really know what's going on. So I don't know. Dylan Risk sometimes was lost out there as well, and I know he's a young guy, but I just don't know if he's. I don't know if he has like the. I don't want to say. I don't know.
He seemed to be at least like as
he
far
was
as
better than the other guys.
I mean,
obviously,
about it, like he seemed to be a very hard worker, like somebody willing to put in the work, and he certainly knew the play. It's a low bar, but he knew the playbook better than any of the other quarterbacks that were in our system.
Well, let's say this about that too. I mean, you know, Mackenzie Milton was very adamant about the influence that Mario Verduzco had on him. Yeah, obviously, Scott Frost did as well, but Mario Verduzco was a big part of who Mackenzie Milton became as far as throwing arm angles, as all that kind of stuff, right? So the question is, you know, when we were talking about bringing back coaching staffs, is Mario a guy that you would bring back? Because Mackenzie Milton, by the way, is the guy that we were talking about for QB coach, right? So, you know, I just, when it comes to Risk, I don't think he's going to be the guy long term. I mean, you got Noah Vedral, those guys that were coming in. I think that's still the type of quarterback that Frost wants to run. But I don't know. I mean, Mario, do you bring Mario back as QB coach or like an analyst or something so that KZ can be the QB coach, et cetera?
See, I think there's a couple things. One, I'm pretty sure, and shout out to the Sons of UCF, another podcast that some of you might listen to. There's a good clip of Mario saying that he hasn't talked to Scott Frost in many years. So I feel like that's probably a no. But I want to go back 1 second. I think you're underestimating Risk. Again, this
probably.
is
I probably am.
Well, here's the reason.
Everybody else, I'm reading the comments over here. So.
reason one: the only person other than Caden Kittler and Paul Roublet in the spring practice that I saw standing there later and practicing was Dylan Risk. He was throwing balls when everyone else is already in cold tubs, and he was doing it over and over again. And that's why allegedly some people thought he might be better than the rest and should have been starting from, I guess that was something that allegedly happened. So you could see some of that proof in the pudding. If you gave him first team reps all year, I feel like we might be at a bowl game, and it's.
Well, we would have been much better off than KJ, obviously.
So we would have won the Florida game for sure. I think.
I mean,
we proved that with Queen. We proved that with Keene last year.
Yeah. So extrapolate that. So this, you know, he has the drive and desire. The things that I feel like made KZ great and Coach Frost great. Even in 2016, while we're learning, he has that inherently. And if you're talking about bringing guys who buy in, who desire and exude culture, you could see that in him, and he wasn't given the chance. So that's 2. I won't go to 3. But I feel like at minimum, like worst case scenario, he's running scout team amazingly. Best case scenario, he's definitely in it for 1 and or 2, unless Raiola comes in here or something like that. But I feel like there will be someone brought in, and we're also assuming Ja'Cory Brown isn't going to learn how to throw the ball accurately, right?
Yeah.
Like,
if he could,
or well, it's the thing. Yes, exactly.
He can't throw the ball. He just can't throw the ball
yet. I don't know.
He can run like crazy, but
look
man,
at who
every once in a while he can do it. But
I said here, even like 6-7 weeks ago, we have the next QB on our roster. I didn't think Gus was going to be gone, but I still think the same thing. The next QB can be currently here, and it might be was it EJ might come out of the port. I don't know if he actually went in officially, but that could be a possibility too. So I really think that risk has more potential than I think people are giving him credit for. And you also all might be right too.
I could be completely wrong. And I was trying to give you guys a hot take, but
well, here's the thing. Josh just literally killed the hot take because he sat squarely on the fence with that last part of his comment.
I'm like, he had me believing. Like I'm changing my mind now.
I mean, when you talk about the quarterback situation, if you go back to even you look at Nebraska and then you look at UCF, he initially didn't want to play Casey. The plan was for Casey to sit, learn, because as great as McKenzie Milton was, you saw the issues that first year. You know, he was reckless.
He wound up coming in because somebody got hurt, right?
Yeah, Justin Holman. Yeah,
Holman got hurt. Yeah.
Holman was a starter. The offense was pretty much built around, and Holman wasn't like a statue. Like he was an athletic guy, but he was more of a pocket passer. Now he threw laser beams all the time. Yeah. But like it wasn't built on his mobility. So the offense was tailored. When he got hurt versus Michigan, we put in Nick Patty, and that's where Frost was like, well, I think Holman was hurt, and like we knew we weren't getting him back for like 3 or 4 weeks. And you still want to be a competitive team. And again, no issue to Nick Patty. I love him. But he was limited. He was a limited guy, and they were like, all right, well, we have McKenzie. Let's see what we can do. Let's see some magic. Like, is he going to give us the magic he gave us in camp, or is he going to give us the craziness he gave us in camp as well? That was the gamble. So, and then you go to Nebraska. He started a true freshman off the jump, over even the guys that were still there. So I think it's going to depend who he gets and where they're at in their development. The transfer portal is a whole different beast.
Trey, we also didn't have the quarterback depth that we've had. I mean, you think about even last year, the quarterback depth that you have. Yeah, KJ didn't pan out, right? But KJ was the leading passer in Arkansas history before he came to us. I saw him play. I said all along I thought he was going to be great. Didn't happen. You had a 4-star Miami kid come in as the backup quarterback, right? You had EJ Colson, another 4-star, 2-time state champion,
17-year-old
quarterback, right? And then you had Dylan Risk, right? So the situation, does McKenzie Milton get his shot now under Scott Frost? Maybe not, right?
Yeah.
So I when we're talking about this quarterback talk, I think what this season has proved yet again is that the quarterback is the most important position on the field if you had to have a single position that you identified, right? And so getting that right's imperative. And I do think that Scott Frost, he'd be crazy not to go out and see what was out there in the portal, number one. And number two, I'm not sure where Dylan falls. I think Dylan, knowing Frost and how loyal he is sometimes to a fault, especially his staff was a perfect, in Nebraska. That was a perfect example of that. So I think Dylan will definitely get his props within the QB room. The question is what else can he bring in from this portal class to compete? And I'm not sure Dylan's going to be at any better of a situation at the end of the day than what he was this year. I think the difference is you've got a coach who's willing to play the best guy on the field. And that I think is the key difference.
And ultimately, like, just completely honest, Dylan Risk is not his guy. Now, can Dylan Risk grow on Coach Frost? It's possible, but he, at both of his stops, he went and got his guy. McKenzie didn't play year one. If this ideal situation was perfect, McKenzie would have redshirted his first year and then been ready the second year. I think that was more of where McKenzie was in his development than rather if he was ready or not. Adrian Martinez at Nebraska, he was the best guy, and he was a little bit further along than McKenzie was coming out. So Frost played him. But those were Frost's guys. So
yeah, from the beginning, before
the beginning. So I think Frost is going to go find his guy.
I think it's kind of weird with inherited players too when a new coach comes in. So,
yep. So that's why
that's kind of why I say that.
Yeah.
I mean,
and Dylan has a shot. It's not like you have no chance enter the portal. Essentially, no.
Yeah.
Coach Frost is going to just like he gave everybody a clean slate. He didn't care what you did with the first half. He didn't care, if they told you you were horrible. He was like, if you're horrible, you're going to show me you're horrible. I'm going to watch, we're going to watch the tape, and if you're great and they told me you're horrible, I'm going to see it for myself. So that's what he's going to give you the shot. Now, if Dylan maximizes that opportunity, that might change how Frost views, redshirting and playing guys. All of that's different. Even with the transfer portal, if he goes and gets his guy in the transfer portal, he might be the starter, but he's going to get a fair shake. I can honestly say Coach Frost didn't keep everybody happy on as far as who he recruited in playing time because there's only 11 spots on each side. But he always gave everybody a fair shot to compete. And if he's going to play the best guy, no matter what, that's not going to be a question. Especially at that position. His position, he's not going to risk because, like you said, Roger, that is the single most important position on the field. It can win you games and it can lose you games. He's not going to hinge his career, each game on playing the guy he likes the most. No, he's going to play the best guy, whether that guy is Dylan Risk, whether that guy is in the portal, whether that guy's in high school. He's going to play the best guy.
Josh, you made a comment in the chat. You said something about Mario saying no. I didn't read that anywhere. Did Mario say no to us for QB coach here?
No. This is just insights that Frost and Mario have not talked in a while. So it didn't seem like a friendly answer to that question. It was like, nope, and dead silence. So I feel like that's telling. It would be interesting because he's in town. I know he's somewhere in Oviedo, I think, still, and it's not like he's far.
Having a glass of wine, smoking cigars, and celebrating Beethoven's birthday.
There's nothing wrong with that either. He's probably got plenty of money. He's just relaxing.
Yeah. Trey, so when it comes to Coach Frost, obviously this past week you've seen an outpouring of support, primarily from former players that played under him at UCF. And obviously, he's been, talked up as a player's coach. You've said that he's a player's coach. I wonder I know there's a lot of reasons for the failure at Nebraska. It's not just any one thing, but was that same kind of love that all the UCF players have had for him? Was that not the case at Nebraska with the players he recruited there? Or, maybe it was just because they were losing so much. And on the flip side, would you maybe not have thought of him so fondly if the winning didn't happen? Or was that kind of same vibe there? Because you're seeing it all at UCF. So and I know there's a lot of reasons that he failed in Nebraska, but I wonder what, if that same kind of love was there in Nebraska from the players.
Yeah. It's hard because those guys at UCF, of course, we all loved them. I think those guys, at least my 1 year there, they loved Coach Frost, because they were coming off of the same situation. I don't know if you guys remember, when Coach Frost was kind of getting leaked, all the Nebraska guys were super excited, holy smokes, we got Coach. I remember.
Dude, they showed up to our games.
Yeah, they were excited.
They're different. They're different.
Different.
Yeah, and even even the players, when we were there, they loved when Coach Frost was there. He did everything the same. I just think the environment was so different. And I wish I could paint a better picture, but there's so many things that we appreciate at UCF as players that they kind of turn an eye to. A perfect example I remember, like we ate Nitros. Like, you know, we would go to Nitros, eat pizza, everything. When Coach Frost came in and like Coach O'Leary catered us food, obviously, but Coach Frost came in and was like, Coach Duval, all right, look, this is what we have to do. You guys want to be professionals? You got to eat like this, do this, eat like this. And it was so simple, but like just that structure, we appreciated at UCF. Like, holy smokes, these guys care about what we're putting in our body. They're invested in what we're putting in our body. They're invested in us being better people, being better athletes. That meant something. But I'm not gonna lie. I went to Nebraska. You want to talk about eating like kings? They are treated like kings. They have a dining hall that you can get a ribeye steak every single day and potatoes if you wanted to. And I'm talking 20-ounce ribeye steaks every day. Omelet, but like it's amazing. But like I remember guys would be like, oh, I don't feel like eating steak today. I want to go to McDonald's. Like to me, that was just like, bro, do you not understand? Like this is top of the notch stuff. You can't just be, I want McDonald's. Like they were literally, and you have to eat lunch. Like you would get, we checked off lists, like go eat your lunch, make sure you're fed. Guys would skip lunch because they didn't want to eat the assortment of food like Greek and Roman gods would eat. Like that's a mentality thing. That's not like a Coach Frost problem, you know, like that's, and I don't even necessarily blame the guys either. It's just, they don't understand the difference. Like I tell people, we were eating the tilapia out of the little river by the softball field. That's where we were eating our food. You know, we appreciated when we would get, you know, shrimp and the little things. It's almost like appreciating the little things in life. Like I think that's what made it different. And Coach Frost loved on us the whole way through. Like he loved on them just as hard as he loved on us. It's just the people are different. The guys,
the nutrition center wasn't there either at that time, Trey.
Yeah.
And like, there's a lot of things that we have to offer that we
Big 12 school now.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a completely different narrative, and it's funny because Emily just said Trey giving Nebraska free advertising.
No, I mean that was just, and this was again. This is I've been to UCF. Like, this was 7 years ago.
That was so on point because I started saying that and I was transitioning.
UCF is again. UCF has since we were there. It's exponentially grown in what they've done.
Hey, be thankful you had Nitros, Trey. I didn't have
Nitros. We didn't know anything that we were eating bad. You know, we thought this is what everybody does. Like this is all. Like we thought it was awesome until Frost was like, you guys need to stop eating pizza every day. That's not good for you. You know,
back in the day at Kansas, we had to eat what they told us to eat. Like they gave us our food. You ate that. Like this is what you eat. Everybody had a diet.
Yeah,
that's what
I think. I just think like
UCF now.
Yeah, UCF they have a nutrition center. They have chefs. Like I remember even when like Jordan Johnson come to mind, like because you know I believe he was vegan. Like he was eating pure no meat food, you know, as an offensive lineman, and they were taking care of him. Like and that was 4 years ago. Like it's UCF has exponentially grown in that as far as that aspect, and now we're going to get more money to continue to grow in that aspect as well. So Emily, I'm not giving it Nebraska for advertising because again, if I could eat Nitros and be warm year round, I'd take that than eating steaks and freezing in all the time. That's just me.
All right, so as we're kind of exploring the future here, let's talk a little bit about offensive coordinator, right? I mean, are we all on board and thinking that the OC is not, and defensive coordinator too, because Chins obviously is with Boise State right now, defensive coordinator.
No chance.
And they're doing well. So as far as the current offensive coordinator at UCF, what do you think happens there? If not, who do you think we can get? And what would you like to see that would match up to what Frost's offense would look like?
I don't know, but I mean, Frost, that's another thing where I'm going to do another hot take right off the top. But Frost has to get his guy. I mean, he just can't take a random. Not that our guy that's here right now is a random guy, but he can't just, I don't think he can take a random guy that doesn't know or get what he's doing and just plug him in and have him do it. You know, I guess he could because he's going to call the plays, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was about to say, Coach Frost,
actually,
he's going to be the OC.
You saw my mind work there.
Coach
I forgot about that. Yeah, so maybe he can plug old Kenny in.
I think to me, DC is the most important position of the entire staff. I mean, who is he going to get to like support him and his scheme on the other side of the ball? Because I mean, I think we all know he's going to call plays. He's going to be our OC. Somebody might have that title. Somebody might be a couple guys, co-OCs. We had that when he was here as well, if I recall. I don't remember exactly, but I mean, we had position coaches on the offensive side that were co-offensive coordinators, but like Scott Frost called the plays. And so on the defensive side, just again, this is, I think, what we're going to see here with the maturity of Scott Frost over the last 7 years since he's been gone. Just, you know, how is he going to go about that hire of the DC? Because he's got to hire the right guy there. I think it's the most important player or important staff member, in my opinion, is getting a defensive coordinator that can come up with a game plan from a defensive standpoint that's going to be able to support like what Scott Frost wants to do on the offensive end. And I say it that way because of the way that Coach Frost talked about it in the press conference, right? You know, maybe it's not the best thing to do to be on the field for a short period of time because we're just scoring points and then, you know, the defense is right back on the field. And then by the end of the game, they're worn down. You know, so that balance and that support is going to be a very fascinating part of this staff construction.
Well, Emily brings up an interesting point because I had not heard this. So if you want, yeah, Mr. Causey, I
wasn't going to say anything.
Oh, you got to throw it in there. Come on. I make goofs all the time and I get razzed for it. So you know, Chris and Night Sweat have got to get theirs in too. Emily, real quick, she mentioned, I hear John Summerall denied the other head coaching jobs, never denied he was searching for just the right DC spot. Now, Emily, I'm actually interested in hearing more about that. If you can put that in the comments, because I had not heard that. Everything that I've heard is he's pretty much a lock to UNC. That was their guy from the beginning, and that's where he wanted to go. And, you know, obviously there's other coaching options out there, but everything that I'd heard was that John Summerall wanted to go to UNC. If you had heard something different, it would be great if you could put that in the comments.
I heard a few rumblings today on the radio that he was actually eyeing going back to Tulane for now. Like, and I don't know if that's just punting till next year and the coaches searches that were going there. So there's it seems to be wavering a little bit on whether or not he's going to go anywhere at the moment.
Well, so Bill Belichick has confirmed.
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
I would say Bill Belichick has confirmed he is talking to UNC. That's not a rumor.
It's so nuts.
Yeah, he confirmed it like this afternoon. We're recording on Monday this afternoon.
No, let the hate flow through you, man. I mean, if you've got Belichick on your squad, you know you've got to have a Star Wars reference in there. Come on, it's Darth Maul.
I'm with you, Ben. I think DC is probably the more important position because Coach Frost is going to be calling the plays.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like a lot of these guys now. Sean McVay calls the plays. Andy Reid calls the plays. The guys that are OC, they have important positions. Like they do a lot of the play design, a lot of the script stuff during the week in preparation for the games. But I think DC is the most important. Coach Frost, he learned a lot. He learned, like he talked about. He learned the most thing was to delegate. You know, I think he may take a little bit back on the reins. Not immediately. He's going to want to do it. But I think he's learned that it's stressful to try to control everything. You know, you want to get guys that you trust to do what you want, but like give them the freedom to do what they do, do what they do best. So,
but Trey, if he is going to call the plays, then and this is not just for you, but for everybody, if he is going to call the plays, then why not keep the current OC?
I mean, he could that's what we kind of.
Yeah, because
I changed my opinion right in the middle of it. My brain clicked, and I was like, "Wait a second, Scott Frost calls the plays, so he can whoever he wants can be the offensive coordinator." I mean, in name,
Yeah, so for me, like keep him and then keep the recruiting ties because he's a pretty good recruiter in the Miami area, especially.
That's like just like more high level stuff. All of that he's going to take a factor into because if he has, for example, Coach Fish, big time Miami, South Florida guy, he recruits that area extremely well, and Florida just in general. You don't really want to have a lot of guys overlapping the same area because you kind of want to spread your net. You don't want to spread it, coast to coast. Obviously, that's too many players, but you want your pipelines that you can go to. I know a lot of this we talk about like Oviedo High School. Back when I was playing, it was in the Tampa area a lot. So like I think there's guys who do that. So it all of that's going to be a part in who he keeps if he decides to let everybody go, if he decides to keep some guys. What they do is not just the coaching aspect; it's the recruiting aspect. It's do your players like you, or do when he talks to all of them, oh no, I hate my coach. He does X, Y, Z. All of that stuff matters in who he keeps. Because it'd be great to keep. I think Tim Harris was our offensive coordinator. It'd be great, if we could keep somebody that kind of mend that gap of the old guard to the new guard. Like it's great to have it, but I'm not saying it's true. But if all his guys didn't like him, which I don't think that's true, I'm just saying if they all say I don't like Coach Harris, Coach Frost isn't going to keep him because you're just making that room still upset with who they have.
Right.
So it's a lot that goes into it. It's easy to just say, oh yeah, let's choose him because he's a good guy. Like it's so much more. You have to click, kind of like what you're saying, Andrew. They have to see football similarly. You don't have to see it exactly the same, but like if philosophically you don't see football how he sees it, it's not going to work in general, and even if you do see it, but you just don't agree with it, it won't work because you don't see football the same, So
top of that, the other considerations too is remember this coaching staff just got signed to a new contract along with Gus Malzahn. So Gus Malzahn gave up his $12 million contract. Thank you, Gus. We appreciate the buyout. You walking away from the buyout. Yeah, I agree. Crazy. I never thought that was going to happen.
Need the money.
Crazy good. Crazy smart. Gus.
He got Gus, and I haven't been. I don't think I was on since Gus has been gone with you guys. But like that whole thing was kind of a gift from Mike Norvell. I think that Gus knew that it wasn't going to work out, and Norvell like saved him from being in coaching. Well,
I think
that was a hand out,
and on top of that, Mark Daniels reported that those conversations had been going on for a week and a half. Everybody had said after West Virginia, that was pretty much when
fans are chanting "Fire Gus" or whatever, and having signs and stuff like that. That conversation had been happening on UCF side, I'm sure, for a while.
So we have to thank Alan and Ben for that, for freezing at West Virginia and screaming, "Fire Gus."
I'm sure it was fun.
We were close enough to do it, but Alan and I were keeping it classy while we were sharing a blanket.
You were keeping it frozen. Alan was in the bathroom where the heaters.
I bet that's a fun place to go see a game, though.
It was fun. It would have been a lot more fun if it was obviously the weather, but the weather kept some people out of that stadium, so it wasn't as big of an experience.
Yeah, it wasn't packed. It really wasn't packed. I was expecting more for fan support for the program that they were, but it was still cool.
Because that place is normally pretty packed. I think
they're the nicest fans I ever met in my life too.
Yeah, they're super good.
They stopped burning couches there and allowing them to do that, so they can't stay hot in the stands or warm in the stands. So I could see that would affect it. That being said, going back to the OC conversation and some of the other staff, that's a consideration too. We save the money there, but if Frost, decides to do that, that may take from the salary pool. Obviously, the 12 million saves us some money, but remember, folks, we don't get our money for this year and this season until June, and we only get half shares, and a portion of that money is going to the AAC as part of our buyout, which was strung out over 10 years. So I think that may, if Coach Frost does decide that he's going to do all of the play calling at the very beginning, especially as he implements his new system, I think that affects whether you keep somebody in the offensive coordinator role or not, versus going out and trying to find someone else. The other question is who can we go out there and find? Right?
Kevin Smith.
Sorry. Well,
he's somebody I want him back. Kevin Smith.
That'd be fascinating.
He's a running back coach. He's not really an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah. And another guy is
maybe it's his time.
I think
my sleeper pick is Rob Calabrese. I know we haven't heard that name for a long time, but he actually works with the Rams right now.
Well, Rocal already, Frost specifically mentioned Rocal in the presser, and then on top of that, I think he might still have eligibility left over for his year.
Probably does.
Hey, that one. Who's that kid that just got his 8th year pass? Shoot, I saw that.
KJ just got
Miami. Yeah.
KJ just got his 7th next year of eligibility. Yeah, so
he got his year back from this year.
Yep.
Who are the people in charge of these waivers? Because
I want to know what happened with
KJ. A year for
Trey, you got a year, right? You think you have a year?
Hold on. Emily has something interesting here.
I like
Ryan Schneider's OC. I mean, I don't know, Emily. Ryan, he sort of started to come back into the UCF fold more recently. There was a lot of bad blood there for a long time, and a lot of his players went elsewhere. But the last year or so, Gus had made some inroads. It'll be interesting to see. I don't know what kind of relationship Frost had when he was out there recruiting with Ryan Schneider. Now, again, that was a while ago, longer ago, right? And I don't even think he was at head coach of where he is now at that time. So who knows? But that's interesting to think about.
They're playing for the state championship this weekend, I believe Coco is.
Yeah, they're playing down here.
Yeah, I was about to say the older school fans might still remember him putting a Bulls decal on his Senior Bowl or whatever thing. There's still people salty from that time, but I like the concept, Emily. That isn't a stretch, and it is bringing more Florida ties. I guess when I'm saying Kevin Smith, other than the fact of the Florida ties and the recruiting, we were kind of talking about this earlier, how much is too much perhaps in really good Florida recruiting. We have Cam Six, right? We were talking about Tim Harris possibly, but if he sticks around, we have that. At what point do we saturate too much of Florida with recruiting?
Earlier, I meant to.
I'll tell you one thing: you can never, if we built our entire team, 100% of our team off of Florida players, we would have a very good football team.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with
Georgia.
It's more so, I guess, just you don't want the overlap in the sense that you're not. There's a lot of guys who play football just in high school, and there's so many players that you don't know if you don't look and don't go look. Everybody, I mean, Gus was very tied in with Alabama. Just that's where he knows. So he knows a lot of those guys.
Well, he knew Georgia too.
Georgia well. I think
Scott Frost has been watching as well. He's been watching football. He's had some time to watch some football.
Well, I mean, not to reference it too much, but I mean, who was the first recruit that Scott Frost ever has? It wasn't Mackenzie Milton. It was Adrian Killett.
Yeah,
I mean,
and he was
And did anybody embody that UCF fast more than Adrian Killett?
Yeah.
So I just think that's
a model of UCF fast. He is the poster child for UCF fast.
And I think that that's an example of him going to get one of his guys right away that just will kind of show everyone exactly what he's trying to do here. And that's what makes these upcoming weeks, rather interesting, because who is going to be one of those guys that, signs with signs with UCF because of Coach Frost, and he seems to be one of those Frost guys that are like, wow,
my question
he's pairing up with Scott Frost, that's different.
With the recruiting and Scott Frost, though, is like, I wonder if because he had a lot of hype coming from Oregon the last time, like
he doesn't. Now he doesn't. I mean, it doesn't as far as college football connections, right?
I'm wondering if the kids know who he is. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
well, I mean, it was 7 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. So I think what he leans on as a coach here would be, him coming back and saying, hey, look what I did here the last time with Florida kids and coming back here and doing this again, right? I think it hasn't been that long that the players that are currently coming up have forgotten that. I also think it helps that Danny White's national championship, which, by the way, was referenced in the presser, brought a national champion. Mark Daniels said brought a national champion to UCF, So despite what you think, Trey, and despite what you think, Ben, it's sticking. And that also gives me hope. That also
it was me and Alex.
Stadium.
I was going to say it wasn't me.
It was me and Trey.
All right, Alan.
Here you go. I got something for you. Here you go.
National champs, undefeated.
There we go. So, that gives me hope too that the new stadium, when it's updated, will have the national champions emblazoned on the tower. That being said, I also think that one of the other opportunities that Gus kind of lost track with that Frost had was Jacksonville area recruits. We started getting think about some of those recruits, Otis Anderson. Exactly. So, that I think is an opportunity for us to gain a foothold back there as well. And I'd really like to get into Miami again. I mean, George O'Leary had success getting in there. We have not been in South Florida as much as I would like. And I think that's an opportunity. Now for O-linemen, the best O-linemen typically come from the Midwest or from Georgia. Georgia has some great. I gave it to you. Come on, give me a minute. I'm getting to it. Come on, Mr. But that being said, I think that's the opportunity as far as recruiting is concerned. So the other thing, real quick, while we were talking about, I mentioned this in the comments. Daytona Beach Journal was at the presser, since you mentioned Killins, right? At the presser, asked a question, and so was Reddit.
Yeah,
college football. Like what? Reddit college football was at the presser.
Did you see that guy though?
Yeah, he looked like he was the Reddit.
He looked like
I'm the Reddit football guy. It was hilarious.
Since we're talking about recruiting and talking about staff, one of the things that I'm interested to see if we are going to try to do here with Frost coming in is, are we going to try to take some of the salary cap management off and look at a general manager type position here at UCF? I don't know if UCF, I don't know if Tre Mahajer even has an appetite for that kind of thing, or Scott Frost for that matter. But I wouldn't mind seeing that role here, especially since, as we talked about, Scott Frost is going to look to run the offense. He's going to look to call plays. As we saw with Gus and as we saw with other coaches that have done that, Norvell, I mean, even Frost at Nebraska, like that's a lot to take in nowadays in college football and still do all the management of the money and, signing players to those types of things. So a general manager role, I think, would be beneficial here at UCF if we can pull it off somehow and find the right person to run that side of the football team. So
I think TMO is the perfect freaking person to do that job.
You think just TMO in general?
On his plate,
I thought we were talking we were waiting on the TMO conversation until after this one.
Oh, sorry. But
no, it's all good. But here's the thing:
you don't send me the notes. You got to send me the notes,
Andrew. Here's the thing: I will say, UCF TMO actually did come out and mention this. It was several months ago when all of this stuff started coming out about the changes for 25. He, as they bring this in house and the Kingdom goes away, they are hiring, and they actually hired internally staff to do those roles for Kingdom, including a what will be, they called it VP of something, right?
Okay.
Some
Player personnel,
analogous.
something like that.
No, it wasn't even that direct. It was something whatever. But there, that will be the general manager for the team. So they are hiring on that.
Okay.
G-Man Miller says here, is there going to be a lot more bad blood between UCF and Colorado? Because then you'll have Colorado versus former Nebraska. I don't think it's for that. I think it's just, I just think it's, one of the things Frost is going to have to contend with that he didn't have to before is he's going to have to contend with Dion when it goes on the recruiting trail, because he's going to continue to beat up Florida. So it'll be really interesting, to see how that works out. And yes, Night Sweat, I agree with you. 100%.
100%. When he said it, he was like, Reddit. And I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
That was hilarious. I was laughing at that point. I was crying before that, but I laughed at that point.
Yeah, that poor guy.
I definitely shed a tear or two.
Well, yeah, to Chris's point, our only beef with Colorado is they have the same colors. I agree, unless we're wearing our Citronaut colors, right?
Yeah. Where's the pewter?
So all right. So we've kind of talked about coaches. We've kind of talked about recruiting, what we expect to see there. We still had a pretty solid class considering we had 6 4-star recruits, second most in the Big 12, without a coach. So the ability for Scott Frost to recruit here, if he gets on it quickly, he said he was going to focus on the guys that are currently on the roster and making sure he's keeping them here. That tells me that some of those folks that are on the fence that said that they were possibly opening up the portal but didn't jump in, like the Nigel Kelly type players, he's focusing on them first. Then he's going to go out and recruit the future of college football for UCF. Anything else that you guys want to talk about from the presser before I do think that there's, we're going to have more conversations about Coach Frost, and actually some of those guys that we mentioned earlier in the text thread that Trey has with the former players will be joining us on the show. So be on the lookout for more of those as we kind of move along. Is there anything else that you guys want to touch on from the Frost side as far as the press conference goes, the coaching goes, and any of the players, etc.?
Go ahead. If anybody else has it. Yeah, I was just going to quickly say, and this might just help us transition because I know we're going to move on to a different topic right now. It's just I said this to Roger, I said this to you before the show, that and you may have known back then, but I thought it was really interesting to hear that Terry Mahajer had talked to Scott Frost a couple years ago about an OC position. Learned a little more about that today just from listening to the radio, that it seemed like that conversation actually didn't go great at the time. And I think that was due to the timing of that phone call when it was made. He had just, left Nebraska. And so obviously he wasn't looking to go anywhere like here, especially underneath, Malzahn. But the fact that conversation was even made, that phone call was even made a couple years ago to have him come back as an OC under Gus Malzahn, I thought, to me at least, it might have been reported in the dungeon and I just missed it from Brandon, but to me at least, that blew my mind that they had talked about that, because wow, wouldn't have that been crazy?
Yeah, it was pretty known, I think, that he.
Yeah, I like I said, I might have missed it, but just to think about what that would have been, and I guess I say all that to say that that it was 2 things on that. One, that Terry Mahajer kind of had the guts to make that phone call and just at least explore it. I thought it showed me a lot about him and kind of his aggressiveness as an AD. I thought that was really interesting. And then also it just kind of puts another like wrinkle into this very surreal like weekend and week for Night Nation that Scott Frost is back, because you know, timing is everything in life, and just the fact that this job opened up at the right time for him and the right time for us to welcome him back, I just think is just another really cool part of the story.
I got something to add too on that.
I think the interesting thing for me is that speaks to the relationship that Gus and TMO may have had at that point, that it may have already been rocky all the way back to then. It's one thing that I saw from the interview, and we'll talk about Terry Mahajer's part in the presser here in a minute, but that guy wants to win, whether it's because he wants to leave or whether he truly bleeds black and gold. That guy wants to win. And that tells me that, you know, for all of the bullets that have been thrown his way, myself included, you know, Terry Mahajer having the guts to be able to do that.
Big time.
The Terry Mahajer having the guts to do that. And I think it really speaks to the fact that yes, Gus was the face of the franchise. And I think Terry probably actively took a back seat for a reason, because Gus was the face of the franchise. Behind the scenes, I think there was more friction than people, not on a personal level, but from a work-related level, that, you know, his expectations, Terry Mahajer's expectations, are to win. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops as Coach Scott Frost comes on board. If, you know, both from the fan base's perspective and from the AD's perspective, if Scott Frost comes in and he does not win quickly, or if it's a true rebuild and we're tearing it down and rebuilding it, you know, he's done it before. How does the fan base, if he takes a different tact, he doesn't have the UCF fast offense that we all are remembering, how do they react when it takes a little bit longer? And I think he said what he said in the conference because of press conference because of that. But how will we react? Do we give him the patience that we gave Gus? And Andrew, I'm going to give you the floor because you said you wanted to say something. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, Scott Frost has not done things like, so I know a lot of people are freaking out like, oh, this was the whole thing last week, you know, it never works out when you bring your ex back or whatever, when you get back together with your ex, it never works out, blah, 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 which is true most of the time. But Scott Frost is not a normal dude, because he did some things. The biggest thing I think that he did that was very different, and it went back to what Trey was saying about he cared about people and he cared about the players. But, you know, he came back and coached that bowl game.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal. So nobody really had ever done, I don't think anybody had ever done that before.
Nobody had or has since.
Right.
It doesn't make sense to do that.
He's used to doing things like non-conventionally. You know what I'm saying? And that gives me a glimmer of hope that this is going to work out really good, because it's just feels like it was kind of in a weird kind of way meant to be. I don't know. I don't know, man.
All right, Andrew's weird getting nostalgic on us.
No, weird things happen though, and he's not a conventional guy. So, right. You know, the second time around hopefully is even better than the first time. I mean, it would be awesome. The fans love this guy. The donors love this guy. The players loved this guy. You know what I'm saying? So it's just it never crossed my mind that it would actually happen until it did, though. Like I said, like it just people have been saying bring back Scott Frost, you know, Twitter and the message board and all this stuff for years, but you never thought that it was actually going to happen until it happened. You're like, where are we? Like, pinch me. Is this a dream? You know, like, I don't know. It's just, it's crazy. It blows my mind.
Yeah. All right.
But I'm excited. I was not excited the last couple of years.
And we'll say this about that too. I was pretty vocal about me not wanting Scott Frost here, right? for a lot of reasons.
And I talked a lot of crap on Scott Frost.
You did.
But
we've got the tapes. But
listen to it.
that being said, for me, I will say this about that. I'm still in prove it to me mode. I think from a, when I think about the hire, when I think about where UCF was as a fan base, where our apathy was, etc. I think this was great for that. It creates a new storyline for UCF. It gives him the opportunity to have that. Everybody in America loves a comeback story, right? And
that's what the team was like that he had here before was a comeback story from 0-12 to national champions.
Yeah. And so, I think for me, it's going to be a prove it kind of moment, right? So I know everybody's excited, and I think it brought back the Riz, to borrow Josh's word, to the program, right? When we were in a pretty dark place. That Utah game was terrible. And so I think from that perspective, that's probably about the best hire we could have made, at that time. But I'm still in prove it mode. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Scott Frost prove me wrong, Scott.
In my brain, I
want to love you.
I'm prove me mode, but like with my emotions, I'm excited. I'm fired up.
I feel like there's very few coaches that could have done this, and this is what I talked about exactly last week. We need someone with Riz, swagger, whatever you want to call it,
swagger,
to bring this back. And honestly, we all kind of knew the only two people who could do that were probably Scott Frost and Deion Sanders. And
I was going to say, yeah.
That's it. Like,
and Deion is swagger. Period.
And
you look up in the dictionary swagger, and you get a picture of Deion Sanders.
Yeah. And Terry did reach out.
Scott Frost. I mean, you do a little bit,
Yeah.
Scott Frost has always been like that. If you guys didn't see him play probably in college, but like that's what he was like.
Okay,
good. You did.
Yeah. I'm the old head here.
Well, Andrew played against him.
Yeah, and the dude was swagger. Like that, like he just had a lot of people didn't like him. I didn't necessarily like him. I played Kansas. I was on Kansas, and we played Nebraska twice every year, most of the time.
Yeah.
And it was the Big 8 back then. That was a long time ago. But I didn't particularly like him. I'd been around him. Lawrence, Kansas, and Omaha, Nebraska, or Lincoln, Nebraska is not that far.
Not that far, yeah.
And we would cross paths, like, on off weeks or whatever. Sometimes people would go back and forth, travel, So I didn't like him, but he oozed freaking confidence and swagger when he played. I'm sure. Trey, you probably have seen some film or whatever. I know that they show highlights still of Scott Frost.
Oh, yeah.
At Nebraska. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've seen.
You saw when he was trying to cover him in the option week when he was running the option. We were going to play, what was it, Navy?
Navy,
yeah. But like, so that's cool.
I mean, look, like the guy ran around UCF's campus with his shirt off. Like, how, like, he's a confident dude, as athletes, of course we want to do that, but like, that's not something we're just doing. He was a confident dude. Like, he exuded that confidence, and he always
sometimes a bit much.
Yeah. And even in the play calling, like it's one of those things where we went on fourth down. What?
He's a confident guy, and he uses confidence.
Yeah, I think he teetered that.
Heupel never did that. I'm going to borrow this from Josh. He put this in the chat. He said Heupel never did that. Ran around campus without his shirt on.
I don't think anybody wanted to see that.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm not running around campus with my shirt off either. Listen, I get it, and I bet you Frost would not be doing that now.
I don't know, but we're all thankful that
No,
you're
I
not
bet-
running
I bet
around
he will.
campus without your shirt on, Josh. I can tell you that.
No,
I bet
neither
he
Josh
will, but-
Lazar nor Josh Heupel will run around campus with our shirts off. You're welcome.
We need to keep Frost away from the college girls. That's what we need to.
Oh
Hopefully
boy,
he's learned his lesson. on
Okay.
that front.
he
the
married
bartenders.
one. Remember?
What's that?
So
Oh, yeah.
Going on.
So okay, all right. So this has been a hot topic. Just real quick, was she? Did she look happy, or did she? What was that emotion on her face?
Cares? Listen. Here's what I actually. Personally, who cares? Let the woman breathe. I'm more interested. Trey, I know his son was born in Orlando. Did he bring his kid? It was only a kid at the time. Did he bring him
was
the
there in
kid?
Nebraska.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was about to say. So it's interesting because I think on the videos of that presentation, that kid's old. Like he said, like
Yeah, he's
he's
7,
6.
8.
6'7". Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
so that's kind of
7 years.
to me forget
Right.
his wife and I think all that stuff is whatever. I
No,
think it's
just
gonna be
think it's funny
interesting
because I was trying to
having
judge
this
her
kid
facial
there.
expressions the entire time.
Oh my
Nah.
God, what are we at? Like the Housewives of Orange County part of the show?
Look, I think it's gonna be awesome. I really think that's a piece of that
She's
puzzle.
easy to look at.
Him talking about growing his family in Orlando and having his son who's at an age where I'm sure he's playing. He might not be playing football, but I'm
In
sure
sports.
he's learning and growing and into sports in some way,
He's
shape,
got to
or
be
form.
8, 9 years old. He's definitely into sports.
Gotta be. And so I actually think that level of nostalgia is way more interesting and probably important than whether Mrs. Frost is excited to be here. Listen, I feel like
She's got to be.
there's a lot. Listen, she's what from is from Arizona, right? Or at least was there a lot.
She's a West Coast.
We
girl.
know she loves warm weather. I think she'll be fine.
Yeah, so
Put it that way.
quick correction of myself. Alan actually came up with that hypo quip. So
It's all right.
Alan, that was pretty funny.
It was great.
I think she was a little nervous.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, this is a big deal. But I do think it's interesting that Scott pointed out the fact that he wanted his son to watch him coach football here, right? So you would think with his Nebraska, I think he really has a bad taste in his mouth with Nebraska. I think he probably still has love for Nebraska and all that, but it's going to take a while longer for him to get over that. That's going to be one of
those fans are cheering for him, though.
Oh yeah, there was already.
They're going to be watching.
Oh
yeah, 100%. So that's good. Get us a better contract. Get us in the SEC. All right. Let's go ahead and do our famous pivot. All right, let's talk a little Terry Mahajer. Now, you're talking about controversial things, right? If you take the pulse of the UCF fan base and you've been watching any of the commentary about his portion of the Q&A, which is after he did the intro, you had Terry Mahajer up there, and we've mentioned him a few times about, you know, fans were really, really critical about his responses to some of the media questions that were involved. So this, I think for this group, this is not so much of a hot take, but I'm thinking for the rest of Night Nation, it might be. I'm sorry, guys. Terry Mahajer, that's the first time in about 2 years that I've seen him be the AD that I want him to be. Yep. Right. When we had Danny White here, we loved his swagger. We loved that he put himself out. Is he as polished as Danny White? Absolutely not.
No, but, real dude though.
But exactly, when he was up there at that podium, he was talking about facts. He was talking about where he saw UCF and where it belonged, and he talked about it like an AD that wanted to stay here. So I 100%. The way that he purported himself, the way that he spoke, other than the hey go rah rah stuff that he was putting in there, right? You could tell when he was up there answering those questions that he was laser focused on it, had thought about this stuff, and was completely involved and for UCF. It didn't sound like an AD that was just here for the job and was looking for the next leg up. And you know what? I wouldn't blame him if he was. But in the moment, right now, I got from Terry Mahajer was that he is someone who, and I haven't been his biggest fan. I don't think he presents himself very well all the time. But when he's in his element and lets him be himself, that passion comes through. And that's what the fans were looking for, especially right now, post this season that we had, or the last 2 seasons that we had, and that sorry excuse of a game that Utah was.
Yeah, I mean,
I sat through in the rain, and I'm angry.
Yeah, you guys saw me say it on the text talk that we had, our group text that we have. But the word that I keep using when I think about that press conference and hear him talk about the process that we went through as hiring Scott Frost back here is Terry Mahajer just elevated himself in my eyes. I feel like. And I'm with Emily. I didn't hear any of the criticism that Night Nation is essentially giving him for the Q&A portion or any part of the.
Probably more in the dungeon than anywhere else.
Yeah, it must be in the dungeon. I didn't see that, but by the same token, like I mean, Scott Frost said it right. He's a very passionate guy, and anybody who's interacted with him, especially face to face, understands that he is that. He is a very, very passionate guy. I mean, at the UCF basketball, like alumni weekends, whenever I get to interact with him, you just immediately see that right away. I mean, but I think some of the things that his predecessor, obviously, and Danny White, kind of exuded that really buttoned up, like super sharp guy that just could, like is kind of like
hey, listen, it was his Cole Haans that sold everybody.
Yeah, well, just a real deal businessman, like that's Danny White, right? And I think it's maybe, if I'm being honest with myself, it's just unfair to try to force Terry Mahajer in that box, because that's not really who he is. But by the same token, I think he proved through this process, as far as what I know about it, that he wasn't afraid to not only cast a wide net, but he wasn't afraid to give certain people a chance if he felt like they should be vetted and they should be looked at closely, because they might wind up being exactly what we need at this time. And from everything that I've heard, it just appears that Scott Frost, had to do some convincing with Terry Mahajer to really make sure that he considered him seriously for this position at this time. But I give Mahajer a lot of credit, because some egos get involved in all sorts of positions in any type of business, and I imagine the thoughts crept in his mind throughout this process of, I just don't want to be, everyone to say that I'm just following and just kind of I'm getting the guy that the fans are saying that I want or that we should get, and the guy that Danny White hired, and just following in those footsteps and not creating my own path. And I think some of those thoughts may have crept into his mind, but I think at the same time he was willing to listen to what Frost had to say and how he wanted to come back and how he felt like his vision matched up with his own. And I give Terry a lot of credit for that. I think as far as I'm concerned, over the last few weeks, being able, however it was worked out, whoever said it first, but like being able to work out the deal where we didn't have to pay Gus Malzahn the buyout, I think is a huge feather in his cap. And then on top of that, like I just talked about with the process of hiring Frost, but if you think about it from a Frost perspective, it's like he didn't have a buyout either. We didn't have to go pay a buyout to some other school to get Scott Frost. So it's like that's not a small amount of money we're talking about here. I don't care if we're the top notch, most flush with resources school there is. We're certainly not that at UCF, but to think that we saved $12 million on the buyout and then didn't have to pay another school in order to hire Scott Frost.
I heard something about we had to pay. I heard something about Nebraska makes money off of this somehow because of something
They
that was
probably
in
have
his
an
contract.
offset. They have an offset, so they don't have to pay him as much out of.
It's like they make $5 million off of this deal or something like that.
They probably don't make it. They offset what they owed him.
Yeah, and that's fine because we don't have to pay that, right? That's what
Right,
I'm saying. Financially,
yeah.
we're so
Right.
we're so set with this deal financially, like much better than any other candidate, and much better if Gus Malzahn would have dug his feet in and said, "I'm not leaving." And
Can you
so,
imagine what we would have been paying?
yeah, I mean, to pull all those
like-
things off, you got to give TMO a lot of credit for that. Like
Absolutely.
it may not have just been him, but certainly he was the guy leading that ship. So I give him a lot of credit for it.
You guys know my history with Tre Mahajer. I don't know if the people listening do or not, so I'm going to explain just very quickly. Tre Mahajer, I've known for like 20 years. Tre Mahajer was not an assistant coach, but a GA, a graduate assistant on my team when I played at Kansas. And I played special teams a lot, and he was on special teams. So I interacted with him on a daily basis. And I didn't particularly like him then, and I wasn't a guy that particularly liked my football coaches most of the time. Just because I had kind of a disdain for all of them. We had kind of an O'Leary guy too. But anyway, Tre Mahajer was like in college at that time when I was in college, and he wasn't too much older than me. He's not too much older than me. Just a couple of years. And he was like super frat boy, like the annoying frat boy that everybody like just wants to shut up, you know? So seeing what I saw the other night, and I compared to what he was 20 years ago, you know, like it made me really happy actually. To see him get emotional and to cry, like that is passion, period. Scott Frost does it. TMO does it. I'm kind of that kind of a guy. If you ever listen to the Nightline episodes where I would cry when I talked about Mackenzie Milton, I would cry when I talked about Shaquem Griffin. I'm like that. So for me to see that come from him was huge to me. It's just, you know, it's one of those things. And I think that he hit it out of the park with this whole thing. Like he did what the fans wanted, and he did what the donors wanted. Like he actually went out and got Scott Frost.
Well, I think the big thing, Andrew, there to me, to kind of build off of what you're saying, is both of them made a point in the presser to say we're in this together. Whereas I think with Gus Malzahn and Tre Mahajer, I think Gus Malzahn was basically given carte blanche with the football program, and I think that started to grate on his relationship with Tre Mahajer, especially as things went sideways and he had to kind of sit back in silence. I think that's going to be different with Scott Frost, and I think ultimately that will be a good thing as far as decision making, et cetera. Because we went through this whole thing. Oh, I'm taking back play calling duties. No, I'm calling plays again. And at the end, Tre Mahajer at the end told Gus Malzahn after the beginning of the season, you're pulling back your play calling duties and you're giving it to other people. You have to make changes. And I think that's why, as of West Virginia, we were where we were. I think it's going to be different with Coach Scott Frost. I think they're going to try to collaborate. I think Scott Frost had the unique experience to be with an AD in Danny White that was supportive of the program in the right ways. And I think he wants that and appreciates that relationship and understands. And he said it multiple times last night that it requires both. The coach doesn't do this in a vacuum, especially not today in today's environment with NIL and portal and everything else that goes along with it. I mean, you're today, right now, you have Oklahoma State that's in a contract, fight with their head coach. The guy who's the face of the franchise for Oklahoma State for 20 years. because they need him to claw back some of his deals so that they can put it back into the funds to buy players in 2025. So it's a different environment. The two of them are going to have to work together. And I think they're both committed to that. And I think in every sense of the word, that's going to be the case. Now, to Emily's point, yes, I want our variety of uniforms back. We've lost our luster when it comes to that. As I said in the comments, I yell anthracite every time it's black and gold. When Terry said night mode, light mode, night mode.
I like that she mentioned this dungeon.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that. That was awesome. I laughed real time.
Yeah.
I just now pointed it out, but
yeah. So when we think about that, that's part of getting that swagger back. And I think that's part of Gus Malzahn going away. And I think Terry Mahajer will be open to that. I just hope, because he took credit for the whole night mode thing, which I like the night mode. I like the light mode. For the numbers, some people are critical of the numbers. We had to come up with our own numbers because we were paying for those numbers to someone else to use the ones that were on the Nike jerseys from 2017 to 2018. But I hope maybe he can still call Phil up and maybe get some help with the jerseys and not just rely on our own teams to come up with it, because we do need some variety and bring that swagger back besides the Citronaut uniforms.
At Nebraska, didn't you guys have the Air Nike, the
Jordans?
You guys didn't have them?
No,
they were
you had Adidas, didn't you?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. Forgot about that.
I think did they just go to Jordan? No, they're still Adidas. They're still Adidas school.
They're Adidas. I forgot about that. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully you can get some.
Speaking of Jordans, Scott Frost's shoes yesterday were on point.
Yeah. I noticed that was
he
the
had
first thing I
all
noticed.
the drip going. I didn't maybe me personally, I didn't love the loose tie, but besides that, the drip was good for Scott Frost. I'll give him an A- for the drip, only because I don't like the loose tie look, but that's just me.
The suit plus the Jordans, yeah.
Yeah, the Jordans brought the fit together.
Yeah, so G-Man Miller says Oklahoma is Jordan $2,000 per pair. That's probably why they can afford Dylan Gabriel.
Oh, excuse me.
Sorry, I added the Dylan Gabriel parts. But yeah, so this is Emily. One of TMO's first interviews with Mark said he's getting rid of our old variety and going back to the classic, aka basic unis. Don't think that was Gus. I'm not. Yes, and I'm not so sure Gus didn't have any influence over that either. I remember that as well. That's why I said he was taking full credit for that. But part of that was money. Part of that was the new Nike deal. We kind of were negotiating with Nike, and we had a 5-year deal that we're on now. But it was actually in some ways a worse deal than what we had in 2017, 2018. I'm not sure how much of that was TMO, the businessman, etc. But at the end of the day, bottom line is we need it back, because I'm with Emily on this, and G-Man corrects me and says no, Scott's shoes are $2,000. Okay, well, Scott can afford $2,000 shoes.
Yeah,
my most expensive pair of Jordans are $800, and that's about where I call the line there. So
I'm like 100.
I'm lucky if I can find shoes that fit me. So
yeah, I have weird feet too. So
when my bags were lost overseas, I went to a snipe store in Austria and got some all black Air Force Ones. I'm like, listen, if you're gonna pay for them, I'm gonna do this, and they're comfortable. I haven't bought Air Force Ones for myself in a very long time. I get why people spend this amount of money on this stuff. It's still comfortable and it looks damn good. So,
hey, we're a clean show. E for everyone. Come on.
Dang.
You got to do that in post.
beep.
Yeah, exactly.
Whenever
right.
E.
Oh, there it is.
Maybe
all
get
right.
my stuff.
So, guys,
Are you glad I brought the sound effects tonight? I got more.
What can you give us a nostalgia moo? For the cows. All right. We did it for the cows. All right. let's anything else you want to talk about as far as Terry Mahajer is concerned, his performance yesterday, anything to do with his decision making on this. Like I said, I just wanted to put it out there and to kind of talk about his questions, because I think that was one of the moments where I think he actually won the press conference more than Scott Frost did, in my opinion, because he looked like he was energetic. He believed in what we were doing. He was trying to do the right thing. No matter what, even if we failed with Coach Malzahn, he's still pushing. And that's what we want out of an AD and someone who believes, has that energy. And let's get back to the chip on her shoulder, crip walking, football team. That's what I want to see. Like, seriously, let's let bowling on the side of the sidelines, with players, celebrations, like whatever. Let's get back to that swagger. What's that?
Get the fun back, man.
Yeah.
Well, not just the fun, but the swagger, the chip on his shoulder.
Yeah,
I don't care what your stadium looks like.
Yeah.
Or going into Maryland and knocking people and jumping up on the benches in Maryland and jumping up and down, getting yelled at on the sidelines. Who cares? Let's go for it. We are UCF. Let's be UCF. We are not Auburn.
And this is what you get with Scott Frost coming back versus hiring Barry Odom or insert blank head coach or offensive coordinator. Now, I feel like that's one piece of the puzzle that you just can't generate by hiring Coach Andy Kay. Still not going to get your last name. I'm sure you're going to do a great job as a head coach somewhere else, but I'm not going to try that. But that is part of the package, and I feel like we also might give Scott Frost, Royal fan base, please give him enough time to do things. He said it. We need to say it as fans. We shouldn't expect, magic in a bottle twice immediately. And I feel like if we see progression, if we see excitement, fun, all those things, bit of that swagger, I think that will be enough for most reasonable fans for a little while.
All right. So let's go ahead and leave it on that note and pivot. All right, let's do a quick UCF signing day recap. UCF signs 11 players: linebacker Malachi Boone, offensive lineman Jaquez Joyner, defensive back Tony Williams, defensive back Raheem Stroud. We needed help in DB for sure. Wide receiver Santonio Isaac, wide receiver Carl Jenkins Jr., wide receiver Wade and Charles. Do you think we needed wide receivers? Yes. Defensive tackle Ryshawn Perry. Running back Tavion Swint, who has been there from the beginning. Running back Wayman Jordan Jr., and I believe he comes from a community college, if I'm not mistaken. Tight end Caden Peening.
He was the best running back in junior college football last year.
Yes. So we've got him. We've got tight end Caden Peening. So 7 offensive players, 4 defensive players, 2 4-stars, depending on which you look at it. If you're looking at 247 or if you're looking at Rivals or whoever you're looking at, some say it's 6, some say it's 2. Key flips, Javon Boggs flipped to FSU. That guy's flipped 6 times. He may end up coming back. So Emily says she has to run. Love the live
awesome
show.
Job, Emily.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
nice
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. Key flips, Javon Boggs. UCF right now ranks 68th overall. That's last in the Big 12. But the average recruit score is number 2, just behind Colorado. So considering Dion and how Dion flipped some of our recruits, a certain defensive tackle that was a 4-star that showed up at our Colorado game. I'd say we're doing pretty good, all things considered. We still have pending signing in offensive lineman Andrew Stargell. He's committed, but has yet to sign. So I think some people were still waiting to see how the coaching fell out. So right now, as far as transfers in the portal, quarterback that are in the portal, not just saying that they were going into the portal, quarterback EJ Colson, wide receiver Tyree Patterson, wide receiver Xavier Townsend, offensive lineman and center Caden Kittler, offensive lineman Marcellus Marshall. I'm guessing he didn't want to go through another rebuild, but I don't know where he's going to go, to be honest. He was great.
I think I saw he got offered by Florida State, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, that makes sense. Gus doing his thing. Marcellus Marshall was great, and FSU needs a whole new offensive line. So I could see that. Defensive tackle Matthew Alexander played well for us this year as well. Defensive tackle Derek LeBlanc. Kind of sad to see that one go, but if John Walker stays, which will be interesting to see if he does.
Who's the wide receiver?
You mentioned
his name.
X.
What was it?
Xavier Townsend.
Townsend actually maybe might want to think about that.
Yeah.
Townsend would work really, really well in Scott Frost's freaking offense.
Well, I think Townsend from word on the street is that Xavier Townsend was promised that he was going to be used a certain way this year and was not.
Oh.
So that's why with Malzahn leaving, I mean, that might change, but these are guys that are actually in the portal. Defensive end Caven Call, kind of sad to see him go, but we've got with Nigel Kelly coming back. I think we're going to be okay on defensive end. Linebacker Cam Moore. Defensive back Byron Threats. This one stings. Defensive back Chasen Johnson.
Yeah, he was one of my favorite guys. That's a bummer.
Yep.
He's a hard-nosed football player.
Yep, exactly. I hope that somehow we can pull him back from the void, so to speak. It's happened before. He would be a sophomore. He got some play this year. He played really, really well in defensive back. I think that guy's going to be a stud wherever he goes.
He was a freshman?
He was this year, yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I hope he doesn't get lost in the shuffle, to be honest. Then you've got
if people watch film, he won't get lost.
Yep, and then you've got kicker Colton Boomer. Well, even if they pick him up, the question is will he make a?
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, you can see football guys like real, like he just has it. He has it. As a former defensive back, I can tell you that kid has something.
100%. So, as we mentioned, Nigel Kelly did announce he was going in the portal. He is not in the portal and has signed with UCF. His NIL deal. Antoine Jackson, as of right now, is not in the portal. He was expected to go. The Henderson twins announced they were going into the portal, but are not in there either as of right now. So that's kind of where we stand. Obviously, Coach Frost will have some conversations with those guys. We'll see where they end up. But it'll be really, really interesting. So that's all we've got for football for this show. Obviously, we've talked a lot longer than we normally do. We usually have our shows at about 2 hours. We're at 2 hours and 22 minutes. So I want to pivot real quick.
Pivot.
Talk a little hoops. So let's pivot.
Pivot.
Wow. Super exciting. All right. Let's talk a little UCF hoops. UCF defeated Charleston State 66-51 to improve to 7-2 on the season. They were not hitting anything in the first half of this game.
Bad.
It was bad. It was really bad. So that was interesting to watch. Key stats: Jordan Ivy Curry, 16 points, 6 rebounds. Chim had a little bit of a coming out party this week. He had a lot of blocks. He had 6 blocks in this game, and he wasn't leaving his feet all the time to get those blocks, and he was leveraging his size in the correct way. So he had a big impact on this game. Hall had 10 points, 6 rebounds. UCF ended up shooting 35.8% from the field, but at one point we're shooting 9%. Tarleton State 41.5%. Ben, what did you want to say about all that?
Yeah, I think we talked about it, on our group chat, but Tarleton State leads the country in turnovers per game, and so that when you're going to play them, that it's going to be a relatively sloppy game, and we didn't want to fall into that style of play. In the first half, there were stretches in that game where we did kind of fall into that style of play. We didn't particularly have terrible shots during those stretches, but they certainly weren't falling. And you mentioned Chiam. I really was impressed with the way that he played throughout the game. But in the first half, when we could not hit a shot, as you mentioned, Chiam seemed to be the one guy that was stable offensively. There was a point with probably about 9 minutes left in the first half where Chiam had our only field goals of our entire team. The rest were just free throws. So I thought he carried us for stretches. But what UCF did well in this game is they had really good runs. They had one with about 7 minutes left in the first half to about the 4 or 3 minute mark, where they just went on a run and just kind of like popped the lead to where they needed to be comfortable. Then they started out the second half similar to the way they started the first half. It wasn't necessarily during that stretch that they were missing shots, but that's where the sloppiness of the game kind of fell in, where there was a lot of different turnovers from both sides. And it is actually really wild to watch a team like Tarleton State play, because I haven't seen too many teams that are as careless with the basketball as they are. They seem to have talented players, but they just seem to just not really take care of the ball at all. So Chiam was offensive kind of catalyst in the first half. The second half, during the run where we really just extended the lead and just kind of pushed it to a beyond a point where Tarleton State could handle it. That run was really driven by Juice Curry. I mean, Jordan Ivy Curry, he had like about 8 straight points on his own. I mean, he had a steal and a 3-pointer. I mean, he was just really the offensive catalyst in the second half. Certainly Chiam was the player of the game for me. I've talked about him a lot this season, even in games that he didn't necessarily show up on the stat sheet, but I just feel like that kid is something special. He is a real anchor to this defense. When he is in the game, we are a different team from a defensive standpoint, where we can switch all 5 players if a ball screen happens with a 5-on-1, meaning the center is screening for the point guard. When that happens in a regular basketball game, a lot of the times you can never switch that screen, because I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, but you can never switch that screen, because a point guard going downhill on a big man, usually that's a matchup that the point guard's going to win because they're just quicker. Chiam is so quick for his size, and he is so athletic and agile that he could switch that and still allow us to recover. And the reason why and because he can do that, our defense is just very dynamic when he's in the game. And so I'm excited to continue to see his growth. And then what I saw in this game is, man, if he can just continue to develop that offensive game as well, in particular those little touch shots around the basket, I think he's gonna elevate our team to the next level. And then, of course, when we get Sellers back, and we just kind of keep growing as a team. But overall, sloppy game, but I'm glad we got the win, and we held them to 51 points, which was the lowest point total all season for UCF as far as our defense is concerned. So good win against a lesser opponent.
Let's talk about what UCF alum put out here. He says, when will Mikey and Sellers be back? Mikey's out of the boot, so he's going to have to get in basketball shape, because if you're in a boot, you're not participating in any basketball activities. So I don't expect him and I didn't expect him to come back before conference play started. They're going to have to work him back into basketball shape. And as far as Sellers is concerned, the latest I've heard is that he may not be back at all. That's kind of changed. So Johnny Dawkins has never been good, not good, transparent about medical type of stuff. Sellers has been practicing with the team and participating in basketball activities with the team, meaning he's shooting, he's not taking contact, right? But I don't think from what I'm hearing as of this week, I'm not sure that Sellers will be back this season, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's a real shame. I had not heard that because obviously, as you said, Roger, that has changed rather recently because, you heard as early as last week that he's possibly going to be back before conference play started, not even in the conference, so that's a shame. Sounds like there was some sort of setback there. And like we said, that's a real shame. If we can't get him back this season, I don't. It's not a player that you can just sit there and say, "Oh, that we'll be fine, next man up." Like that's a loss.
He was the leading scorer in the Big 12 last year.
That for a stretch there, he was definitely top 5 to end the season. And so like I mean, you can't just simply say that you can replace a guy like that. That being said, we're off to a good start chemistry wise, and it does seem like we have something here that to work off of. It is a real shame that I was really looking forward to adding that piece in Sellers because I thought that he was really going to elevate and take our dynamic backcourt to the next level when he was injected in there. So losing him would be a blow. It'll be real interesting to see when Mikey Williams can come back because everything that I've heard, yes, he's out of the boot. Yes, he's trying to get back in game shape, but that's really that last part is really what seems to be we're waiting on. That is, when is he going to get back into that basketball shape that he needs to be in order to be a contributing member on the floor for Johnny Dawkins, because we've seen the depth on this team, in particular the depth that we have in the backcourt. We've got a lot of guys back there, and despite not getting Sellers back, it'll be interesting to see how Mikey can fit into that scenario. I'm not saying that he can't fit into it because he's a dynamic athlete, but
my biggest concern, Ben, is this team can play really, really well offensively, and that was one of the things that we talked about was a difference this year for this basketball team, right? We are still adjusting defensively with the rotations that we have.
Yeah.
I don't understand why Coleman's still out there. I think he's a liability offensively, to be honest. He had that game a couple of games ago that maybe gave you some thought that he might be turning it around. I don't know why that is. But we cannot go 0 for 9 from the 3-point line and continue shooting threes. I know it's Tarleton State and we may have changed. And I know Johnny's thought process around it has always been you keep shooting, right? And I'm going to give it up to you. But at some point, you've got to pivot because we've seen too many games. And what's concerning for me is when we're on offensively. DJ has done a great job with his shot. He used to be a 30% 3-point shooter, and now he's pretty automatic. But my concern is when we go into these shooting slumps, we have been doing it more frequently recently. Part of that is, shooting out of a 3-point slump, but I'm pretty concerned when we get to some of these halves and we're shooting 20% that makes it very difficult. And once you get into conference play, and I get it. Kansas just went down again. We got Kansas at home this year. But you cannot do that in the Big 12. So what can they do? What can they do offensively to get their way out of this? I
mean, I it sounds obvious because I've said it before, but you don't see it. What concerns me sometimes is you don't see what is obvious, where like they get into that those types of shooting slumps that you just described, Roger, and they don't seem to quickly make the adjustment to getting downhill, getting the ball in the paint, getting the drive and kick game going, at least get like different looks from three, right? Like where it doesn't look like you're settling from the three, like a guy like Keyshawn Hall, drives the paint and sucks in the defense and kicks it out to an open shooter. When you're missing those shots, it's just like, all right, well, at least it was a really good shot, right? But what you're describing, which is what we're seeing on the court, are those kind of like early shot clock threes when they've already missed 5 in a row, right? Like exactly. Where it looks like we're desperately trying to get back, get back, the 3-point shot. And I don't want to get desperate in those moments. I want us to get more aggressive getting towards the basket. We've got players from position 1 through 5 on that court that are all capable scorers on the inside, inside the paint. And so, again, you've heard me say this a million times. Like, to me, the solution whenever we get into any type of shooting slump is to go inside out. Like, you have got to get the ball inside first. And that doesn't mean that you have to get it inside of the big man first. Like, what that really means is just you got to get downhill and get the ball in the paint. And that's the only way that you're going to really get out of a shooting slump, is you got to change up the offense. Now, what I have seen this season versus previous seasons is they do throw different looks at you offensively. And I think his last name is Hall. His name is escaping me right now. But the coach that we brought in from Texas State, right? Like, he's kind of this offensive guru. And I think he's brought some new wrinkles to this offense that has really worked for us when we're on. And so I'd like to see more involvement there as far as just throwing the defense, like throwing different looks from an offensive standpoint at the defense to try to mix things up and try to get back,
spacing
back on track when we go through these slumps.
Spacing, et cetera, right? So we've seen the pick and rolls. We mentioned that last week. We've seen extra passing. We've seen more slashing. But we got to space out and drive the paint.
Adam Hood, excuse me, is the name I was looking for. I just wanted to make sure I got his name right. Adam Hood. Yep.
And then the other thing that concerns me right now with where we are as we're gearing up for conference play is we still seem to have trouble defending the 3-point line. Guys who get the extra pass. We've been able to defend that in the past. It's been a problem, and then we've kind of figured it out by the time conference play has gone. I don't see our team doing that. I'd also like to see us use a little more press. Now, I know that you set up the press with some of your offensive sets, but at the same time, I would like to see us do a better job of not getting sucked in on help defense and being able to defend the 3-point line from the extra pass.
Yeah, we've definitely struggled that's what is interesting. You've already touched on it, Roger. It's interesting about watching this team this season. While we're exciting to watch and we've got some dynamic athletes, in the past, what we are focusing on is, wow, look how good this team is defensively. And it almost seems a little switch this year, even though that we still go through those offensive struggles at the beginning of the game in particular. I don't know. I mean, there's some stretches there where you really see that true, Johnny Dawkins style, like suffocating defense. And then other stretches like we even saw in the second half against Tarleton State where we were scoring, but they were scoring. I mean, we went from.
They still shot 41% with the turnovers and everything. They still shot 41%.
Right. And because there was a time in the second half where it was like a good, 6-7 possession stretch where both teams scored like within 10 seconds off the shot clock, like in a row. It was like every team was just scoring it looked like an NBA All-Star game there for a second. I was like, where is the defense? And then at the end of that stretch, that's when Juice Curry got his steal and got a 3 and kind of righted the ship and we kind of pushed the lead out. But by the same token, you definitely don't want to see those stretches where the defense just is lacking, and it happens to be the same type of way that we're losing these possessions. The other thing that we need to make sure that we can get better at is, and I don't have the stats in front of me, so I may be wrong stats-wise in the non-conference so far, but we are allowing on certain critical possessions a lot of offensive rebounds from the other team. And when we play teams like Kansas, when we play teams like Houston, obviously, Baylor, Iowa State, I mean, these are teams that crash the boards relentlessly. And if we give them 3-4 extra shots per possession, we are going to get blown out by teams that are that good. And so we've gotten away with it against some less than talented competition, but that's something that we have got to clean up. Johnny Dawkins teams, when it comes to boxing out, have never actually been that great, at least in my eyes. I don't know what they are statistically, but just in my eyes, that's been a little bit of an issue throughout his tenure here, and it's something that we've seen some concerns in the early season here that we need to clean that up as well. So I would agree with you on defending the three. I would also say defensive rebounding, making sure you're boxing out, limiting them to one shot per possession. I think that's going to be very important as we move forward as well.
Well, I think, you mentioned Houston. The big difference for us this year is we typically have a lot of length, especially at center and forward. This year we have some length, but it's like average length is more than what.
Right.
But we don't
We're more like built like Houston has been in the past, like where we've got bigger guards and we've got some like dynamic swingman, but we don't really have true size outside of Chiam and, Rokas Joseph, but he plays limited minutes, so.
And that's that's where I was going with the Houston comparison, because those guys crash the boards all the time. And you saw that last game, not against Tarleton State, but the game before, when you saw DJ in the second half, he was following a shot or following the shot, and he was picking up a lot of boards. So we need a lot more of that, and that's what Houston did so well. All right, let's go ahead, and we won't have another game until next Saturday. So that'll be interesting to see what happens there. But let's go ahead and pivot once again.
Pivot.
All right. So I want to do what we do every week and give a little listener love back to the listeners. Savannah fan. A lot of these comments go back to the coaching conversation that we had and who the next head coach was going to be. Obviously, we know who that is now, so some of this isn't as relevant. But Savannah fan, UNLV's Barry Odom with his OC Brennan Marion bringing the go-go offense to UCF. Well, they didn't go very far against Boise State. And Brennan Marion looks like he's going to go somewhere else. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation. G-Man Miller, who we saw tonight, he and I had a lot of back and forth. He was making some points about to sticking with Gus and whether we should have stuck with Gus. Obviously, we've all moved on. We're having that conversation tonight. But thank you again, G-Man, for commenting. Folks, keep doing that, and you can interact with us in the comments. Eric Edwards 3055 as well. He frequent commenter. Make sure that you're interacting with us. We'll bring it up, obviously, into the show, and any comments, thoughts, concerns that you have, we'll definitely talk about it. So let's go ahead and pivot one more time.
Pivot.
All right, Josh. Don't know. He said didn't plan for it when it was going to go this long.
I could do a little something like, it's up to you.
All right. Well, let's do this just so the folks that are new to the show that are watching on the stream, they get used to what we typically do. Typically, we do a fun fact of the week and stats of the week with Alan's oxymoronic stat of the week. Alan had to get up at 5, so he left us, unfortunately. So we're going to go ahead and pivot and go straight into Josh's sometimes funny fact of the week. So Josh, take us away.
Sure. So Scott Frost has been on a lot of different teams, right? As a player, as a grad assistant, etc. One I wanted to pick out that was interesting was Kansas State, where he was a graduate assistant in 2006. Now, Kansas State in 2006 was led by Ron Prince, his first season there, and the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator of those teams were also in their first seasons at Kansas State. And maybe this might be something Andrew might know because of his Kansas ties. I know not that team. The offensive coordinator of that team is a current college football head coach and has been a head coach for at least 2 well-known teams in the college football playoff. The defensive coordinator is a current NFL head coach and has been in the NFL since that. I want to just double check, since 2006. After that season, he's been in the NFL and is a NFL head coach right now.
Really?
Let's try to see if you can get one of those 2 well-known, these name coaches that worked alongside Scott Frost in 2006.
Oh,
Bro.
Nothing.
I'll give you hints.
Yeah.
I'll give you hints.
The DC.
Okay, so the DC went to Hofstra, go Long Island. You would most well known this gentleman from working in the Southeast. He was I'll make it easy. He was a head coach of the Bucks.
Dungy?
Morris?
No, he's a current head coach, right?
One of you 2 are right.
Morris.
Yeah. Raheem
Right.
Morris.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Morris. Cool.
Now I
Was
remember.
defensive coordinator his first season at K-State in 2006. He was the head coach of Tampa Bay by 2009, 3 years later.
I remember that.
And he was in defensive quality control back in 2002 and 3 and through 5. He probably was on Dungy's team. And he's now currently the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons.
Right.
The one probably a harder rip, but I gave you one. Currently, let me just triple check. Was the head coach of one of our potential coaches.
Was the head coach of one.
He was the head coach of a team of which we were looking at their offensive coordinator.
You're talking about Franklin? James Franklin?
Yes. James Franklin. James, there you go. See, you guys are
almost Trey. Fun fact: almost Trey's head coach, because James Franklin was at Vanderbilt when he was getting recruited, and he was going to end up leaving Vandy. And part of the reason.
I couldn't remember where Franklin came from, but
I mean, he was at Kansas State for those 2 years, went to Maryland for 2 years, got the job at Vanderbilt, and has been at Penn State for almost a decade.
He was the head coach at Maryland, right?
He was OC, QB's coach, assistant head coach.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, normally
that was interesting.
That was interesting, and sometimes funny. Not so funny this week.
It's never funny anymore. The funny,
you got to work on it. So you got to work on your humor, Josh. All right, guys. Thank you for all of you. There's still 11 of you here after 2 hours and 48 minutes.
I'm surprised. We appreciate all 11 of you. Big flop in that for staying up with us.
And UCF alum, yes, I've worked at UCF since I've been 17 years old. So yes, you may have been my student. That is definitely a possibility.
Oh, that's funny.
Actually, even Noah, our producer Noah, was in one of my classes. So Trey might have been, but don't know. Ooh,
Nice.
Quick late night note here from UCF Island.
yeah.
Got word from a particular young O-line coach that DM'd spread the word when asked if he is going to join Frost. And I think we all know who that particular current Cal offensive line
Oh, that's good because
might be.
that's
That
I
hootie
haven't
hoo.
been I've never been
Yep.
happy that he is coaching over there. I mean, I'm happy for him, but I'm not happy of him. You know what I'm saying?
Listen, UCF alum, if you graduated in 2004, I started working as a TA at UCF in 1998. So it is quite possible that you might have seen me on one of your grades. Although I would have been a TA if you graduated in 2004, I would have still been a TA, but it's still possible.
Yeah, believe it or not, and on our normal cast, Josh is the old man of the show, despite me having more gray hair. Andrew, when we can get him to join us, has more gray hair than both of us and is older than both of us.
Yeah, but not on my head. It's just in my
That's
beard.
true. I've got you beat there, brother.
What I've got on my head still, there are a couple spots.
Yeah.
All right. That being said, thank you for joining us tonight.
Yes.
Trey got lost somewhere. He's
In
still
the
here.
ether.
I was
But,
wondering, was that who's the blank screen?
Yes, he
that
is.
Trey?
He's the
It's like
blank
what?
space.
It's like at this point, it's probably 5 a.m. and
And he's in Spain,
Spain?
so like,
Yeah, he gets
it
a
was just
pass.
awesome to be able to do this with him in Spain. That's awesome.
Yeah.
He was able to do it.
Yep. So thank you everybody who's participated. We appreciate you. Tell your friends, like, subscribe, follow. We normally do some other UCF sports stuff, but it is now 12:20 a.m. And it's
Local.
time for us to call it a night.
I'm just waking up.
Yeah. So thank
Hold
you,
on.
UCF alum, and
I'm
thank you
calling
for
you foul on that.
yeah, thank you for listening since Nightline. We appreciate it. We've all, except for Josh, have been a part of the Nightline family.
That's true.
You know, but he's kind of been absorbed into that now that he's part of the TK1 family. But good night from Columbia. Thank you,
Jeez.
UCF alum.
South
I didn't know you
Carolina?
were out there, so we're international.
Yeah.
But we appreciate all of you. Again, like
You're in Colombia? Right now?
UCF alum
UCF
is,
alum is saying, man.
You're
UCF alum is that's on the.
I didn't know.
yeah,
that.
I'm not in Columbia, bro.
No, I thought Josh was for some reason.
Yeah, he's
yeah.
in Medellin. Wow.
All right, Medellin.
Yeah, nice.
He's in
Thank
Medellin
you for
right
listening.
now.
Wow,
All
that's
right.
pretty cool.
That is cool. Well, again, thank you guys for everything, and thank you for following along each and every week. Please make sure you follow, like, subscribe, interact with us on Twitter, everywhere that we've got, because we do put you as part of our show. We appreciate everything that you're doing and being part of it. Hopefully, you watch the playback and get some value, and we appreciate you all. Go
Thank you for
Knights!
having me.
And
John. Sorry.
John.
I messed that
John.
up.
All right, Andrew messed it up.
count?
That's okay. I used to mess it up for Andrew all the time, so that works.
I didn't mean to. I was trying to get that in there, and
Do I still do the after thing if we're doing this live?